everybody. Yeah, sorry for the little bit of a wait there. But I have to be honest, I'm a little bit nervous doing this first live stream with you guys because it took us a long time to set everything up here that we do have set up. And some things didn't work perfectly right, just like we might look a little bit like ghosts right now compared to, like, for example, Da over there, or me. I look always like a ghost. But the main camera here, we were having issues with it, trying to get that working. And we're seeing all your comments coming in. We already got your super chat from Brian. Thank you, Brian. Yeah, we really appreciate that. And so today...
Can I
okay. It's going to be a bit rough. I have to say, it's going to be a bit rough. But once we get into it, I think you guys are going to appreciate it more. And also, something that you can do is in the super chats, if you can put anything in there to say like, oh, I can't hear you, move the mic, anything like that, just let us know because we will try to fix that, and as long as I can see it on chat.
Yeah, I think the thing that got us kind of nervous originally is we thought we're going to start this live stream, and we'll give you all the background and, you know, where we're coming from. But just as we were getting ready a few minutes beforehand, we thought, oh, gee, what might happen is, you know, we're going to log on and we're going to get like 3 people watching, and this is going to be kind of a dead, nobody's interested in this. And then all of a sudden, the chat started coming through at like 5 a second, and we're like, uh-oh.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we were thinking it was going to be like, based on the Twitter followers that we got.
Yeah.
Which we have the, just so you know, our display up here. We're on our Twitter page here right now, and you can see, yeah, we got 368 of you that followed us.
Right.
And so we were thinking it would be roughly that, maybe even less, that would actually watch the live stream.
Right.
But it turns out, no, it's a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're a little bit shocked by that, but it's nice. It's nice. A little nerve-wracking.
Now,
nice.
I think one of the things that we'll do here is, because this is the first live stream, and we're trying to sort of evolve this, and it's going to take a little bit of time through this stream, and maybe with a few of the the more recent ones, the ones that we do in the near future, we will kind of give you a little bit more background into how we set up the studio, how we decided what we did mechanically and electronically, just to give you an idea. If you're interested in doing this, it'll give you a head start in how you develop this. This is not sort of a phone and a Logitech microphone. So excuse me. So one of the things I wanted to start out with is why we're doing this, what we're trying to accomplish, and a few rules of the road just so that this runs relatively smoothly. What got us motivated to do the live stream is because, as probably 95% of you are familiar with our channel, I say at the end of every one of my videos that I read all of the comments and I try to answer as many questions as possible. The idea is I really enjoy it. I like the feedback. I like the information that you guys give, the suggestions. But the limitation is that it's a one-to-one conversation. And a lot of the questions that are asked are often asked repeatedly. Sometimes there's a very common thread that runs through a lot of these questions. Because of that, we thought, what would happen if we could make it, instead of one-on-one, it's one-on-many, so that we can communicate back and forth. I think that's valuable for us, but it's also, I think, potentially very interesting. In addition, you're going to say something?
No, I agree.
Okay.
Well, actually, yeah, let me interrupt for a second. Just since we started talking, our Twitter followers went up from 368 to now, actually, let me show you guys, to 381. Let me refresh it. No, it's still 381.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing I wanted to also mention is there are some rules of the road. This is on YouTube, and we want to keep this family friendly. So we'll appreciate it that you keep the comments relatively clean, relatively family friendly.
And not political. We're going to stay away from that as well.
That was the other thing that I wanted to give as a sort of a rule, and that is you go into a bar or a pub and it says no politics, no religion. That kind of applies here. One of the issues is that we have very strong political and social opinions about a whole bunch of different topics. But there are lots of channels out there that run very good podcasts and live streams that cover this as a speciality. They do a very good job at it, and we're not going to compete with that. But more so, the kind of information, the kind of topics we want to cover here are really not well represented on YouTube. Science, engineering technology, what runs the world, is really not covered in any kind of depth in a live stream or a podcast. And so we don't want to dilute that by trying to cover everything. So we're going to stick with science, engineering, technology, and current events as they apply to what kind of input we can give, our opinions about it, and some feedback from you.
Yeah, and it won't be quite so serious as what you're used to. So it's not going to be the entire thing. It's not going to be just a lecture the entire time.
Right.
So this is just an intro for you guys to get like an idea of what we're doing and everything. But like we have a couple ideas of what we might talk about, but nothing that we're talking about is super prepared or we've over-researched anything like that.
Right.
We're going to either answer your comments and like try to respond to them as best as possible, and talk about stuff that we're interested in and stuff that we can just randomly pull up on Google and Twitter that we might have disagreements about or agree about, and you guys can disagree or agree about them.
Now, getting into the setup, one of the things that we were thinking about is we follow a lot of live streams and podcasts, and frequently what you see is they will set up a room. It looks like a lawyer's office, or you're inside of a schoolroom or office
like Rogan
kind of environment,
like Rogan, like Rogan,
and that's cool. But the point is, because we are in sort of a industrial sort of milieu,
whatever this is,
we decided to set up our studio in one part of our large warehouse. How big is this?
6,400 square feet.
Right, with like, I don't know, 24
and that was a steal, by the way, because the square footage obviously is based on the square footage, but not on the ceiling height.
Right.
And so I'm able to get a place that looks like a lot more impressive without having to spend more, because of the high ceilings.
And the reason we got this was not because we had any intention a few years ago when Alex picked this up, was because as our projects got bigger and bigger, and being located in New England, one of the problems you have is weather. You've seen some of the videos that we've done outside with the solar panels or with the boat. It's often a real hassle where you have to wait a week or two for adequate weather so that you could go outside and do something. And so limited to the original barn.
And let me interrupt you there because you were talking about weather. We just got a super chat from, oh man, I lost it here. There was a guy in Sweden who just super chatted us. So if you're watching from Sweden, thank you. But your weather also probably sucks like it does here.
Yeah.
So it's the same sort of thing. Yeah, it's like the weather is the main factor.
And we'll get into that, like all the hassles and all the advantages. If you're if you're starting a channel and you want to know kind of what we learned over 7 years of getting better and better at it. But the warehouse was purchased because we wanted to be able to do more of our larger projects indoors. That was a major issue. Secondly, some of the things that we do, we need to build them, and they're big. And so you can't go outside all the time to be able to paint and sand and construct and, whatever. So the warehouse is sort of oversized, and so what that allowed us to do is on this end of the warehouse, what we were able to do is section off a place where we could set permanently up the podcast live stream location. We don't have to tear it down. We're using different cameras. Alex will get into that in a little bit. But that way, when we're done, we can turn this off, and we still have plenty of room behind to do all of our other projects.
Yeah, right. And it allowed us just storage space from everywhere in the barn that you didn't have space for to move it down here instead.
Right.
And then we still have additional space to be able to construct like the thing behind me and everything.
And that's another thing, too. A lot of people, when we announced this over the last couple of videos, got nervous. They thought, now they're just going to become live streamers and they're going to drop this stuff. And, if you're watching, you probably do like the channel and you like the kind of topics that we cover. That will not change one iota, because if you're a smaller content creator like we are, 1, 2, 3 people, unlike, say, Veritasium or Smarter Every Day or even like, say, Linus Tech Tips, where they have huge staff that allows them to produce a lot of content very, very frequently. They can turn over very frequently. If we get involved in a project, it can sometimes take months, sometimes weeks, to go from concept all the way to a finished video.
And that's when there's no issues with it.
Right.
So that, like, a lot of times there's issues with the way that we, like, on my end, the way that I film it, say it's a slow-mo type video,
Right.
or something. The camera setups and everything.
Right.
You decided or designed it to work in a certain way, where now it's impossible to be able to film it. So that
Right.
changes your design of how to do it. So it's like it's back and forth.
And then you discover, oh, you know what we got, you can't see it well. So I have to order a new widget, or I have to set it up in a new location or something like that. My point is that because of those inefficiencies in the development of a project, we have large gaps. So even though it might take a couple months or a couple weeks to produce a video, it's not 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. And during those forced vacations that we have between actions that we can take to produce a video, we can put in the live streams. We can discuss what we always are discussing all the time when we go to a restaurant or when we're just talking about the channel. We can then share that with you without interfering with the production schedule of all of the regular videos that we're doing. So don't worry that if you do like the stuff that we've been doing before, not going to change. This is just in addition to what we've been doing in the past.
But besides that, I think it'll add to it. How you said, it's going to add to it. But also we're going to be doing different stuff. It's not always going to be discussing just what we discuss in restaurants and not what we discuss about videos that are coming up, but stuff that maybe, I don't know if you guys watch these type of videos. I like to, and I've shown him recently. It's sort of reaction channels where they react to stuff. But it's usually just kind of not dumb things, but like police body cams or just stuff like that.
Right.
And instead, maybe we can react to some more scientific stuff. So like you said about the...
Well, like SpaceX, for example,
SpaceX.
They launch a rocket, and it's like we can kind of give our insight to what's going on.
Why didn't they build this? Why didn't they do this?
Right.
The deluge system, I think that's horrible. You think it's
great. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's basically what we're going to be doing through the series of live streams. And the frequency, that's yet to be decided. Also, the time that we do this, yet to be decided. We were thinking that we might try to run a couple polls.
Yeah, on Twitter. Let me pull this up right now. Here, I have our Twitter page up here again. And so what I was thinking to do, since there's so many of you watching, I'm not sure if I'll do this right now, especially because a little bit busy right now. But what I was thinking, and I haven't done it before, but is to post a poll on here asking you guys what you think would be the best time for us to host our live streams at.
Right.
Whether it should be on Saturdays or Sundays at 2 o'clock p.m. or 6 o'clock. It really depends on your schedule and what you guys would like.
Right. Yeah. And in addition to that, the the frequency. We're not sure how frequently we will do these. We could potentially do them almost daily, or we could do them once a month. I mean, it could vary a great deal. It probably is not going to be a regular schedule like every Saturday, every other Saturday, or something like that, again, because of production. But that's why it's important to sign up to the Twitter page, simply because we will give notifications well in advance of a scheduled live stream. And also, if something happens, let's say, for example, like, what was it, a Triton submarine? That was a Triton? Yeah. There's a big event happens like that, and everybody is trying to get some insight into what's going on and opinions from people that might have a little bit different insight. We might do a live stream as short notices that evening. So it's kind of a good idea to stay plugged in. We'll try to give you a warning, but sometimes it's best that you stay plugged in.
Okay, good. Okay, you're done. Because there was something that I was waiting for that I got a few comments about. Someone super chatted us, Justin, and they said, I saw a couple comments here saying, respond to the orange super chat. And I wasn't looking at them. So I got this one here from Justin. Okay. And I think a lot of people have asked this before, but I wanted to read it before. I'm not 100% sure if it'll disappear or not.
You're going to be able to bring it back,
I'm new to this.
Go.
So he said, would love to know your first name and your background, education, and work history. You are my personal hero and my hope for humanity and YouTube.
Okay. Can we keep that up there forever? Okay.
Keep it forever.
That's something else we should do. We should introduce ourselves. Obviously, you're familiar with my face. Sometimes Alex will call me Da. I mean, that's how he grew up.
And I'm Alex, obviously.
My name is Eric. And the background is, I'll go well back, but I'll try to make it succinct.
Well, you
I'll do me.
do you, and
Yeah.
I do me. Yeah.
Got it. We started the channel about 7 years ago, and the channel, as I've told a lot of people, was developed originally because for many, many years, decades, I've always been very interested in lasers. And when we first moved out here from New Hampshire, into New Hampshire from Chicago, I joined a couple of online forums, Laser Pointer Forum and Photon Lexicon. And these are forums that discuss all levels of interest in lasers, laser pointers or graduate students at national laboratories, all kinds of interests. And if you were involved in a project or you were doing any kind of work on, say, repairing a laser, you would want to share in the forums to try to get some help. And we found that the easiest way to communicate with the group was to make a short video and then post it on YouTube and share it with the members. When we discovered that there was so much broader interest in this than just the forum members, we got the idea that maybe this is something we should continue on with our channel, with Tech Ingredients. And early on, most of the videos, if you go back to our playlist, are based on lasers, the ones that I've built, the ones that we modified, played around with, made laser projectors and huge, powerful lasers. And then it evolved even beyond that. Prior to that, as I've sort of came across in the last video that we did, I am a physician and practiced medicine for about 35 years, and primarily in Chicago as well as here in New Hampshire. And near the time of the human malware event, I retired, and even though that overlapped the development of this channel, then I just moved into doing this full-time, a little more active expenditure of time. So my background, although it's in medicine, formally, I originally went to college with the intention of becoming a physicist. I was planning on a career in physical chemistry. And I had sort of an interesting event, one of those epiphanies, was that when my to-be wife and some of our friends back in college on a Saturday night decided they would go into Chicago in order to visit, the bars and go out to the restaurants. I was hanging around at the Technological Institute, and this is a Saturday evening, 10 o'clock at night. And I was in a catalysis lab where we had to grind up catalysts and...
I didn't know about this. See, he's
Yeah.
he's letting you know more than I do, and I'm his son.
And what they would do is you would often take in students that had an interest in this, and you would allow them to sort of, soak up some of the corporate culture of being in the scientific community. And in the catalysis lab, what we would do is take aerogels that we would form in the laboratory, and then we would grind them up, literally crush them with a mortar and pestle. And then we would classify them, or basically sieve them out into different sizes before we put them back into the ovens to coat them with palladium and platinum and all the metals. And being the young grunt scientist, it was my duty to do the crushing and the grinding. And as I said, it was about 10, 11 o'clock at night, and I had about 4, old coffee cups with about 3-day-old dried up coffee on the desk. And then I heard this sound out in the hallway, and it was some foreign graduate student that was sort of schlepping by in the sandals and black socks, holding one of these cups of coffee from the vending machine. And it sort of hit me at that point. It was like, I really like science. I love the machines. I love the physics, the numbers, the math. I love it all. But I don't love it only. This isolation from just human contact, the fact that you were always focusing on machines, it was too dry. And so that's when I made the decision to take what courses I had already finished, and I was moving along in the same direction as a pre-med student. And then just decided, no, I'm going to go into medicine, but I'm going to focus on more of the scientific aspects of medicine. But that's when the decision happened. It was that night. It was an epiphany. So that's my background, and that's why I have so much interest in a broad range of physics.
And that's very sweet, and I didn't actually know how deep that went, because we really haven't talked about that much. But to my story is a lot shorter than that. Is when we really started the channel. I think it was 2013 is when the channel actually got started, and it was Da here starting to post on Photon Lexicon, which is up here, and what I was doing was to help him film the videos for of the laser experiments and especially the laser projectors that you were doing. Because there were a lot of people that were interested in doing laser light shows and things like that.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of how we got involved in. We went down to Boston a few times to get involved with some people down there that
pros
knew
that do this.
Yeah, the pros. Yeah, and that knew him from the forums, and we would get together and he would share this, all of the not data, but the constructions, the projects that you had been building.
Yeah.
And go back and forth. And then we started filming on YouTube, on Photon Lexicon, but then quickly went to YouTube, just being a access to post the videos on Photon Lexicon.
Right.
It wasn't for money. It wasn't for views or anything.
No.
It was just to share the info between you two people, or then it became a few hundred people.
Right.
And then on YouTube, it became a few thousand people, and then so on. So I just kept doing that. And I was going to college at Denver University, where actually, well, I can't go into too much detail there because we have to keep some secrets.
Right.
But I went there, but the YouTube channel took off so fast that I decided to come back and just start filming this full time, do all the editing, learn how that worked. So I didn't go to like college. Well, you can probably tell I didn't go to college for video editing. It's not that good.
Yeah.
It works. It's
Fine
not
arts.
that good.
Yeah,
right. So that's really like how I got involved with it.
Yeah.
But we sort of like slowly have come together, and we now both know what our skills are, and we sort of keep out of each other's way. He designs the projects, builds a lot of them. I help him build, just like the one again up here. Like it takes help. You can't build something like that on your own. But then any of the editing and filming and equipment stuff like that you see here, that's sort of my arena. So that's
and it works out because I think you've picked up a lot
for the most
of
part. For the most part, well actually one thing, it works out for the most part. But we tried to hire a couple people, and that didn't work out because of where we are, where we're located.
Right.
And you can't. This is not something you can do online. You can't pay people online and transfer files. They're too big. That doesn't work. So you need someone in person. But then our location limits that. So.
And the problem too, in terms of videography, is that. What he said was true. We've kind of grown together. I think he's picked up more technological background than you'd get in a typical college exposure because of everything that we've done. And I've picked up a lot more of the artistic and the sort of like the idea of media from what he's brought into this. And so that is a very good marriage, and it's very difficult to get somebody else into that. You get a very good videographer that doesn't know anything about physics. They don't know what they're trying to show you in the image. It's important. And at the same time, if you get somebody that's very technologically skilled, it's very difficult for them to be a good presenter, to know like what's going to look good on camera. Can you see the test tube with the liquid in it? Yeah. So eventually, I think we may expand, but we're comfortable with this for now. And I think the expansion we're going to see is on this channel, on this live stream. We're going to be able to get a lot more input from you and give a little bit more of our background, and we may find that we get some more local interest that may allow us to expand to additional employees. We have nothing against it. It's just it has to work.
Yeah, right. And it became difficult. It's like two people and then adding a third person. Yeah. Especially when we both know what we're doing. Yeah. And then trying to add a third person and trying to manage what they're doing or know what they know. And no, that is maybe at some point in the future, get a manager or something.
And one of the things I think, now that we've kind of given you the background, we can kind of go through some more details if you have questions about that over time.
That was probably.
But I think one of the things that we want to do on the live stream is, for example, take some of your questions like you have and answer them. But also, we're going to cover some topics that we think are pretty much in everybody's mind. If you're watching this, you're probably interested in science and technology. And some of the issues that I was thinking about before we even came here today were things like, SpaceX, what's going on with Elon Musk's development, the Fukushima nuclear wastewater release. It's kind of an interesting issue.
Yeah, right. And actually, let's see. Okay, let's pick a few of those topics. Okay.
All right.
So Fukushima is one.
Yeah.
Okay. SpaceX is another.
Okay, I've got another.
Okay, what's the third?
LK99, the recent release of what was supposedly a room temperature, ambient pressure superconductor that was going to change the world from North Korea. South Korean researchers.
Okay, I didn't even know about that one.
Okay.
I don't like that one because I don't know anything about that one. Okay. Now, do you have a fourth one?
We can get into that, but I think I would probably start
out of
with
those three.
one of those.
If you guys can chat here and say which one of those things that you want us to start researching and look into and talk about and argue about. It's going to be an argument because there's no chance we're going to. Yeah, we never agree on everything.
Yeah, we
there's gonna
generally
be a difference.
don't agree on almost anything until we've argued it through.
Okay, everybody is saying LK99. Of course they are.
All right, well, let me start with that. While
no
Alex does a little
about
bit
that.
of research, I can give you kind of an idea of this. The thing about the LK99 that I think was so fascinating is that the history behind this, if you know the name number 99, it represents the fact that this material was actually developed or released or invented in 1999. It isn't sort of a new material. It was that they discovered apparently a new property, superconductivity. And the concept behind this was that if what we could do is we could change the lattice structure in the underlying crystal by introducing little contaminants, we could effectively accomplish the same sort of change in lattice structure that happens under very low temperatures or under very high pressures with more of the traditional high temperature superconductors or low temperature traditional superconductors. So what these researchers did is they published, interestingly enough, a paper that was claiming that they had produced a room temperature superconductor, and simultaneous to the release of this information, one of the researchers also released a paper on this same product, almost like he went off the reservation, in the same journal, in the same issue. And so it was kind of a bit of a red flag, kind of a little weird, and the information that was being given out was very sketchy. The graphs and the statistics were sort of noisy. It appeared that this was changing its superconductivity properties in a gradual way, which is not typical of superconductors. Superconductivity, loss of electrical resistance, is often an extremely abrupt process. Either at a given temperature, it goes from low to medium conductivity to like orders of magnitude, 1 million times better conductivity. It's a very sharp drop. Or if you use a diamond anvil cell or some means of creating very, very high pressures, again, at a very specific point, superconductivity occurs. With the LK99, what happened is they found that it was sort of a gradual change. This would be a unique feature in superconductivity. Starting well above, around the boiling point of water, they started to see the superconductivity beginning, and then when they got down to about room temperature, they had what they said was a superconductor. So this was a bit of a red flag, and I'm not going to get so much into the specific physics and why this doesn't make any sense at this point.
Sure, and I have the graph here that you were talking about, or one of them.
Exactly. Now, is this of LK99, or is this was typical of superconductivity?
It says, crucially, the graph dropped to 0. It says this article is about LK99 superconductor after all.
Yeah, if you go to the original paper, they have a few graphs, and that, yeah. While you keep looking,
you have to give me some hints because this is the first I've ever heard about this.
Okay.
So you can't.
Well, we can get some feedback also from the comments section, and this is
sure.
Alex is not sort of like up to speed on this one topic.
Yeah, and of course you had to bring this one up.
I like
letting me know that something like this was going to happen.
What's interesting to me is not the material itself; it was the politics and the issues that surround the release of the the data. Given that they made this claim, the only information they gave were some relatively noisy graphs, as well as what appeared to be levitation, the process of a superconductor levitating in a magnetic field. A superconductor excludes magnetic field lines because of the nature of its superconductivity. So when you put it in a magnetic field, it forces the lines around the superconductor and it will float. And you'll see this, you can find this just like you saw in that last image where they had the floating piece of superconductor over a magnetic field. That is true of superconductors. It's also true of materials that are called diamagnetic. Most materials are paramagnetic, like iron, like ferrous materials. When you put them in a magnetic field, all the electron spins line up, and you have something where the north will stick to the south. It aligns the magnetic field in the material so that the material is attracted to a magnet. In a diamagnetic material, water is an excellent example, the magnetic spins reverse. And so when you put it in a magnetic field, it will automatically form an opposing magnet, and it will float or it'll levitate. Years ago, they did an interesting experiment where they actually levitated a frog because it contained water, and water, being diamagnetic, was able to float in an extremely high magnetic field. Pyrolytic graphite is another material that has an extremely high diamagnetic property. And so as a result, you can also levitate pyrolytic graphite in a magnetic field. So levitation is not an indication of superconductivity, and that was the primary thing that these researchers were depending on. What was really fascinating, though, is how quickly their methodology was taken by so many laboratories around the world. Even, I think there was one YouTuber that even did this, followed their formula, produced this material, and ended up producing nothing. It didn't work. They couldn't reproduce it. They even tweaked it, and they were not able to reproduce the results. So I think the important thing was the fact that we have, with the internet and the ability to share this information so quickly, we were able to debunk a false claim or an erroneous claim, to be generous, about something as monumental as the production of a superconducting material. I don't know if for example, on that graph that you see right there, that one right in the upper right-hand corner, is an example of the problem that you have with this slow transition over a broad temperature range. That one in the upper right-hand corner is a great example. Yeah, see, this is under a magnetic field.
Let me see if I can
yeah.
make it a little bit bigger there. Yeah.
Yeah. And that is similar to the sort of transition of this material, even though it should be a vertical line under temperature, pressure, and also under a magnetic field, where the superconductivity happens suddenly. This one actually is under high magnetic field. It was showing that it was failing, and you might have another graph that would show this a little bit more precisely.
Found this on Twitter.
Okay.
There's about 1 billion graphs everywhere,
right.
and I'm trying to get the best.
So anyway, that was one of the topics that I wanted to cover because I thought it was more interesting about the sort of the politics of it, not so much the material. It doesn't work. It's not a superconductor. They aren't there yet. But how we were able within a week to determine that it wasn't, and we didn't waste a lot of human resources
even though
building
there was
maglev.
an entire paper written about it and people started accepting
right,
it as
exactly.
fact.
And because it was from an institution that was well respected, it wasn't like some guy in his garage said that he had created a perpetual motion machine.
And you get lots of those
Right.
where as long as it's from a trusted institution, everybody believes it until someone or some people look it up and realize, oh, no, it doesn't actually work.
And typically, like peer review and everything, it takes months. I mean, it takes months. You send out your paper to some peer who reviews it, tries to reproduce it, comes back, and then they say, okay, publish it. This was a really unusual way of publishing information.
Yeah.
Anyway, because this was a topic that I was well versed in, but Alex didn't have so much sort of on this.
It seems almost purposeful that he surprised me with that. It definitely was purposeful.
Okay.
Whatever he says now, it's not true. It was
But one of the other things that I also wanted to talk about was, like, say, the Fukushima thing.
Yeah, Fukushima and SpaceX, because I know that it happened. I don't know everything about them.
Right.
But this LK-99, I had no idea that it happened or anything about it.
Right. I
So
just thought
this
of
was,
this like a
I
couple of
didn't
hours
even
ago.
know what
Okay.
LK-99 or LK-99. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I had no idea.
Right.
But
So, in
okay.
any case,
All
one
right.
of the things that struck me about the Fukushima thing, if people want to hear about that, or the SpaceX, I'm not sure, but I'm going to start with the Fukushima.
Well, let's see. Let's see.
All right.
Let's take a break for a second. Let's see. Since we're moving off of LK-99, who wants, and put it in the chat, who wants Fukushima or who wants SpaceX?
Is there?
We're getting a few here, and you can
Okay.
see them here, right?
All right. Yep.
Can,
I
is
can't
that
really
too
read it
small
from
for
there.
you?
Yeah, it's too small, but I'll
Okay, we're
trust
getting a
you.
lot of Fukushimas.
Okay.
A lot of Fukushimas. Okay, most people are saying Fukushima. Okay.
All right.
So Fukushima. Okay.
So
that I have.
pretty good, background on.
And what you're talking about is the wastewater release.
Right. I'm not talking about the original disaster,
disaster. Yeah, yeah.
2011, I think.
Yeah,
What I'm talking about is that they've publicized the fact that they are beginning to release the contaminated wastewater that has been stored on site for now a decade. And there's a lot of environmental groups and there's a lot of scientists that are sort of chiming in as to, is this safe? Is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? And one of the things that I think is sort of key to all of this is that when you get all the politics involved, you sometimes step away from the numbers. Like, what is the real science behind this radioactive material?
Yep.
One of the things that I learned, I didn't even know this before, but apparently in order to sort of contain this water, they have a huge number of tanks located on the site. But also they have 24/7, they are running power generators there to run refrigeration systems to freeze the soil, to keep it frozen continuously because of the contaminated groundwater, because some of the water that's spilled into the water, it's in the
not
dirt.
the ones in the tanks. They're keeping the groundwater frozen.
Right.
Yeah.
And one of the arguments for saying, we can't just store this forever is that it still is in a seismic zone. So you're, one way or another, at some point, it's probably going to be released, either in an uncontrolled fashion because of another earthquake or in a controlled fashion. And is there a justification for how they're going to be dumping it? For example, do you dump it into the ocean? Do you dump it in some other remote location? And the arguments on both sides, there's some merit. One of the issues is that if you dump all of this diluted stuff into the water, you contaminate the fishing industry. You potentially contaminate the sea lanes where ships are going to be traveling through and expose a huge number of people to this widely dispersing, diluting, but widely dispersing contaminant.
Well, and just like, and I don't know if, again, this could, it's almost always political. There's always some political aspect to it. But like what I'm showing here is like, what they're going to be doing is releasing it slowly over 30 years. So they're not going to do just a big blast of wastewater.
Correct.
Where it contaminates the surrounding waters uninhabitedly for all the fishing and everything like that. But China specifically is saying that they're not going to be fishing in those same waters. I think China banned fishing. What is it? China bans all Japanese seafood.
Right.
Okay. So, and that could be China wanted to ban all seafood, but they had no reason for it until they can say, well, see, Fukushima, they're releasing this wastewater. Or it could be that really it is bad, even though they're doing it over 30 years. It really is bad, and you don't want to fish in that area for 30 years.
Isn't there something that you found earlier on regarding other releases of wastewater?
I think I told you about that. Yeah.
Yeah, because see, one argument for releasing everything at one time is you tell everybody, stay inside, don't eat the fish, don't travel in this area, and for the next month, it's going to be really, really bad. But then it's all gone, and you're no longer exposed to it, so you can protect yourself. But if you're going to dump it for 30 years, there's no way that you're going to stop all fishing and all traveling.
Right.
On the other hand, radiation injury or damage is not linear. So that, for example, if you distribute the radiation release over a very long period of time and keep it near the sort of background noise, the amount of damage done to human beings and fish and the environment is going to be substantially less than accumulated damage than if it's released in one short event. So where do you balance those? Those are the numbers that really matter. And the experts that will make that clear are the ones that you really should be looking for. Whenever they make the argument, you want to hear both sides of that argument and say, how are you going to address either side of that argument? One of the things that you had mentioned that, and you're going to be looking for it.
And I'm trying to find it right now. And it's annoying. I don't know if you guys always have this, but anytime you see an article or something like that, a video that you want to find again, it's almost impossible to find the same one, even if you looked it up 2 days ago.
Yeah, they won't start the same path.
There's no way. So I'm trying to find, and what I had found before, and you might have to take, oh, no, maybe you don't have to take my word on it. I think it's, here we go. Yep.
Okay.
Thank God I actually found it. But
yeah, could you bring that up just a little? Well, okay.
It wasn't Al Jazeera before,
right?
But it's the same. It's the same article.
But it gives you the idea of the proportions. You know, if you ever heard the old statement, if you don't know the numbers, you don't know anything. So if someone says we're contaminating the water, well, yes, 1 tritium atom is enough, but is it harmful? If you don't know the magnitude of the contamination, it doesn't mean very much. And when you look at this graph, for example, this is the planned amount of release from Fukushima, 22 becquerels. And when you look down at all of these other examples of released tritium, it's a rather small number.
Compared to other countries.
In the scale. And one of the things that I brought up about this that I thought is kind of key is this intentional? You know, like if you compare a planned event to a disaster, that's not necessarily a good way to say, well, this is a good thing to do because we've had disasters before that were worse.
Right.
You know, but we're intentional. But it does give an order of magnitude.
And it does say per year.
Yeah.
Which means that these aren't disasters, because unless they're having a disaster every year, or actually multiple ones per year, doesn't matter. On schedule. Yeah. So this must mean that it's either intentional releases or it could be disasters, but they're happening all the time.
Right.
But at least a per year basis, it's relatively low compared to all the other countries that have done it.
Right.
But that could also be justifications. You could say these are the other countries that have done it by plants. So it's not saying by country, but by specific plants.
Right.
So you could theoretically, what if the U.S. has 30 plants that are doing as much as Fukushima? It could end up adding up to being more in the middle of this graph instead of at the bottom of it.
Another thing, too, is everybody seems to focus on tritium. And one of the problems with tritium is that you cannot separate it out. I mean, it's in the water. It's got a short half-life. It's like 12 years. So it doesn't last that long, and over time, it's going to, if you kept it in the tank for 5, 6 half-lives, you're going to have a very low level. So that's one argument for maybe you hold on to it. Materials like, for example, cesium, they can get that out, the radioactive cesium that was present.
So wait. How do they get that out?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly how they purify it, but it's basically a metal.
But tritium you can't.
Tritium being an isotope of hydrogen forms heavy water. So it's like trying to separate water from water. So that's basically one of the problems. But it's also one of the reasons why it doesn't bioaccumulate. You know, one of the problems we had in Chicago was the mercury buildup from discharge from coal-powered plants into the Great Lakes.
You had that here, too, also in New Hampshire. Yeah.
But the bioaccumulation meant that if you're in the high part of the food chain, you know, the little fish eat the microbes, and then the bigger fish eat the little fish, they accumulate in their fat very high concentrations. They sort of filter it out. And so that made the mercury concentration in a lot of the fish very high. Tritium, being water, effectively does not bioaccumulate. Just like when you drink and then you urinate, you're passing the water through you. You don't put it into your fat selectively. So one of the arguments was that even though tritium is, it's not so good to have it around, it is something that you're not going to concentrate in the higher food chain, unlike, say, the cesium, which, like other metals, can be bioaccumulated. So that even if the concentrations are very low, they can build up in those tuna that you want to eat.
Okay, well, but that's a question. And this might I'm the layman. I'm the dumb person here.
Oh, come on.
So why is it that fish of any type that you get in the ocean, some more than others, why do all of them have some sort of like mercury levels? Why do all of them versus land animals versus fish? Why do fish have such a high concentration of mercury?
That's a very good question. Like,
'Cause I don't-
bioaccumulation of mercury in the fat of, like, say, cows and that sort of thing. The only one
Why
reason
would it be in the ocean?
Well,
Is it all man-made or is it some naturally?
my
occurring?
suspicion is it's the food sources. Because, see, for example, even though a cow is very large,
Okay.
it is sort of a first level herbivore. So it's
Okay.
only getting its mercury from the mercury on the grain. While the tuna is
Okay.
eating a smaller fish, which is eating a smaller fish, which is eating, some sort of krill.
But you could say that about wolves or coyotes or something. They're always eating a smaller animal, and that animal is potentially eating a smaller animal or vegetation.
And I think that may be the case. Like this argument I'm making, I'm sort of making it up as I go along, but I'm trying to figure out why you wouldn't get bioaccumulation. I would think you would. Anything that can store fat because of the organometallics. Fat, oils, and metals will form organometallic materials that can be absorbed in fat. That's where most of the mercury is present in tuna.
Okay.
Like if Great Lakes fish, don't eat the fat and you're going to get rid of 95% of all the mercury that was in the body of the fish. But I'm just thinking that maybe most of the meat that we eat, land-based humans, is sort of a primary herbivore. It's not a meat eater itself. We don't eat a lot of predators. So it may be that wolves, maybe seals,
That's true.
maybe
That's true.
polar bears, they may accumulate it. I may be wrong, and there may be something different about the metabolism of, sea life versus land life. But nevertheless, that is a primary problem with bioaccumulation and not so much a problem with tritium. And so that's why the big argument is, do we release it or do we continue to store it? Store it long enough, and it's probably going to be released uncontrolled. Store it long enough, and it's all going to decay and it becomes safe. At the same time, store it short, store it long, depending on linear effects of radiation damage. So I think it's an interesting thing because, what do you do when you have sort of a nuclear power plant? They talk about all this wastewater that needs to be released.
Yeah.
Well, what if it hadn't been damaged in the tsunami? What if the Fukushima was still functioning?
Right.
They're using wastewater, aren't they?
Sure.
I mean, aren't
Yeah,
they using
of
water
course.
to cool their system?
Well, and just like the other plants that you see here, I haven't heard of any disasters happening there. So obviously, it's being not naturally, purposefully released.
Something's happening because they use water. So whether
for cooling and everything, obviously.
right.
Yeah.
So even if the plant had not been damaged,
Yeah.
what I'm thinking is all of the water that was present on site for its normal operation would at some
still
point
be
have to be
released.
dealt with. They'd either have to release it or continue to store it basically forever.
Yeah.
So I'm not so sure this is a sort of fair comparison because we're looking at one plant that was damaged while we're looking at all these other plants that presumably weren't damaged and are releasing a lot of this radioactivity. My bottom line feeling is I don't think it's a very significant issue one way or the other, but I do think it has a lot of political ramifications in countries, maybe like China, are trying to utilize it for leverage in order to justify some other purpose.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not a bad point.
So that's kind of the sort of the downside of trying to understand a lot of things in science and engineering and technology is that you have to find your sources and you have to depend on them, and sometimes you learn that they've got other motivations that could potentially contaminate. That's why you look for lots of sources. One of the other things that I thought would be kind of interesting to talk about is what's going on with SpaceX. Yeah,
I was just reading a funny comment that someone
What?
put in here. It's a joke, but you could swim in a cooling pond or reactor pool and not have any ill effects.
as long as you don't inhale.
Yeah, could be. Yeah. Cooling water is safe. Bunch of questions. A couple of questions here. Yeah, most of them are safest place to be in the nuclear submarine. Yeah, okay. Yeah, nuclear submarines are different though. Obviously, they're so well insulated. It's like you can be next to the reactor in a nuclear submarine, and you're getting less radiation than you would if you're flying in an F-22.
Yeah, I mean,
because of the insulation.
and also just like a common event, it's like, you know, a high wire guy. I mean, not high wire like trapeze artist, but somebody who's working on high powered lines. You know, they don't get killed that often from electrocution, even though they're dealing with megavolts. While probably more people are electrocuted plugging in their hair dryer.
Sure,
because
more people do them. Well,
they know,
but that's
they know what they're doing and the safety measures that are there, and you know the numbers. So how many people do you know that actually have swum in a, you know, nuclear, you know, cooling tank? You know, so
fair enough.
Can't be sure.
Okay,
it's a good point.
So the next one then, if we want to start looking up SpaceX stuff.
Yeah, it's really interesting, you know, because it's a funny thing, you know, with Elon, with our Twitter page. You know, I really haven't been on Twitter. I don't even have a Twitter page. But now with this X sort of thing.
You do now.
But I do now because we're using it as a message board to post for our videos. But I've followed Elon for a long time because he's a remarkable guy with a pretty interesting history. And what strikes me as so remarkable about what has gone on with SpaceX is not only just the successes that they've had, but the speed with which they've been able to develop their rockets and their Starbase and their programs, Falcon and Starship, and just you turn around and, you know, you miss a week and, you know, they've launched something different. You know, it's just it's incredible.
Yeah, they are operating at like light speed. Yeah, you do see a lot, like they're putting out a bunch of rockets, and once they get one that works, they just keep sending it out.
Yeah,
and they find new uses for it.
Right.
So like uses for the International Space Station for resupplying it, sending astronauts there, versus using the Soyuz to do that.
Right.
It's cheaper now. Yeah, and once they get one that works, also something I noticed, once they get something that works, they make like major improvements to it, where even a year ago you would have thought, yeah, you could use it once or twice a year, and now they're using it once a week because they were able to replace the parts so much faster.
Raptor 3, you know, it's like just incredible improvements. And they're willing to, you know, break things in order to improve them. And that's what is so exciting about what they're doing down there. In addition, the fact that they're very, very close to the launch of Starship, and it's like, what's so impressive and intriguing about what's going to happen there is the fact that it breaks so many different rules. You know, the first methane oxygen rocket, almost, the Chinese beat them by a couple of months or whatever. But the point is, I mean, they're right up there with the use of a new fuel that everybody is starting to say, not a bad idea. Super powerful, super efficient engines, putting 33 of them on, you know, a single rocket.
Well, that's actually something that I would have a bit of an issue with, which I don't know. I can't complain because they've done such a good job with it.
But, complain with success.
But having the 33 engines on there, and they said, I don't know how many they said could fail. And it would still it would still be a go.
They would still continue to fly.
And it would be a success. Like still make it to their destination, the orbit, and everything. 4 or something. And with their test flight, or their not test flight, sorry, their static
fire. The last static fire they did.
Yeah. A few of them failed. I don't remember how many.
4
failed.
Yeah.
And they were like, okay, that's good. That works.
Yeah.
4 failed, and that's 4 can fail.
Right.
And so they then launch it anyways after that, and then there's problems. And then also, other reasons. Concrete shot up into there because their stand wasn't tall enough, didn't have the exhaust
deflectors.
But also ducts, I guess, sort of like NASA does.
Right.
You know how they have the, what would you call it?
Deflectors.
I wouldn't call it a deflector.
Yeah, it's
a route. It's like a pipe. I wouldn't call it. It's like calling your exhaust system in your car, like your, not muffler, but your piping system. Yeah, it's not a deflector. But, okay, maybe they do call it that. Okay, I don't know what they call it. But, okay, either way, they just run it. It fails. not completely, but they learned a bunch from it, and then
Right.
they're going to do it again. I think Elon said,
Was it
I think it's
September 11th?
no, I think it's by the end of this month, August
He
like
said,
29th or something.
I think they
unless
just
changed it
I
again.
think they with yesterday. I think they
surprising.
changed
Yeah,
that
okay.
for a closure,
Fair
road
enough.
closure and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
marine notifications.
So like I can't complain about it because obviously it's working, their
Right.
methodology.
Right.
But it does seem a little bit too close. Like if you were if I was going to go on the rocket, there's no way I would
Sure.
you wait until after they've done it
A couple
a
times.
thousand times.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So yeah, like I appreciate the speed that they're doing it at, but there's issues with it.
But I
think it's a little too fast.
there's a reason for this because see,
Okay.
there's a lot of competitors out there.
Yeah, well,
Blue
yeah.
Horizon, the Arian Space.
Yeah, but
the
they're
Chinese.
so far behind. It's like you can take a break now. I could see that, and that is what they did when they were starting up.
Right.
But also, you could say, why change something if it's not broken? Like keep doing it the same way that you have been doing, and that's what led you to success.
But what I think they need to do in this situation
Okay.
is they need to close out the market so that they become the go-to source for orbital launches.
Right, but they are already.
Well, they are with Falcon. Okay, they are with
Okay,
Falcon.
okay.
But
And-
what they need to do is they need to move beyond Falcon because now as the other competitors begin to move up as alternatives to Falcon,
Okay.
when the demand is so high, they start using these other competitors. Elon has to make it impossible for anybody
Yeah,
to find a
true.
better way to get things to orbit
Yeah.
because then it takes all of the oxygen out of the room and these other organizations can't
Yeah.
finance their research and their development. So it keeps them underneath in terms
Right.
of competitiveness. So I think that's one of the arguments for just we got to
That's-
rush ahead
yeah,
as
that's true.
fast
That's
as
true.
possible.
That's true.
Not
Yeah.
that they wouldn't necessarily have financial reasons too. I mean, you've got manpower and you've got the engineers and you've got the land. Why pay for that if it's not you're not using it?
Yeah, you're
But
not
I think
wrong.
it's key that he combines both the business drive as well as the engineering drive to try to make this thing work. And I think you see the difference between what NASA does, where they take 3 years in order to decide on a paint color, and that Starship, they'll just go to the local Home Depot and like slap it on and put it on. It's like it doesn't work as well, but they'll get it into orbit.
Yeah, right.
And that
Yeah,
kind of
yeah, yeah.
approach, I think, is actually a good approach. There has to be a balance.
That's probably why a lot of the Soviets did so well with their space program.
Yeah.
Because they were willing to risk.
People,
Sadly,
too.
people.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. At least he's not risking people, so that's a benefit.
I
He's
heard
just
one of the
risking
interesting
his own
things
money,
about
but-
the potential of Starship is the fact that when this interview was given, it was about 3 years ago, and Elon, I think it was with Everyday Astronaut. I think it was that
I
one.
remember seeing Everyday Astronaut interview him, but what was it when he was at Starbase?
Yeah.
Talking to Elon in person.
Yeah.
Yeah, not like some.
Yeah,
Zoom
and he
thing.
was talking about, what's the argument? Why are Falcon's so successful? Why are you going to the huge Starship? And he said it's all a matter of dollars to orbit. The cheaper we can make it to orbit, the broader the range of potential users. And so he said at that point, we were looking at, and again, this may not be even true today, even before Starship, the cost of launch was approximately $1 million per kilogram.
Right.
And that with Starship fully operational, meaning their turnaround is, similar to Falcon, where they're just launching them every few days, they can lower that to $1,000 a kilogram, 1,000-fold reduction in cost.
Mm-hmm.
What that does is not only does it make it possible to launch more stuff, Starlink and everything else, but it starts to become possible to launch things that just you wouldn't be able to put it in space. And a lot of the cost of developing satellites, orbital telescopes, reconnaissance telescopes, all of that equipment is to try to get it so darn light because every single gram costs a fortune. If it turns out that the cost goes down, then the development of these satellites, the user, the customer, doesn't have to invest such money in order to be able to build their satellites. They say, we don't have to make this out of some exotic material. We can go ahead and use stainless steel. And so as a result, they can build their products cheaper because the cost becomes so cheap to launch it. So then customers that otherwise could never have approached you, small university groups, small groups of people that
Yeah,
can
if we want
produce.
to watch something.
Could.
Yeah.
That you could put. Well, didn't you find like?
And that's what I
Oh,
just pulled up, and I
okay.
was waiting for you to finish.
Okay.
But
This is
what
perfect.
what was the number that you said? Was it $1 million per
It was $1
kilogram
million
or something?
a kilogram. That's my memory of it. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, at some point that was right.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Because
Right.
it was always more expensive.
Right.
So, but yeah, what I pulled up here is their ride share program that they
Right.
have here, and that would be a reason. Also, this ride share idea, a reason for the Starship is the bigger that you get. It's like if you do a ride share thing, you have a bunch of companies that
Right.
are sending their satellites
Right.
in here, a couple of universities that are sending their
Right.
satellites, and all these other.
What kills me about this page,
is the,
though,
is the price.
not the
Oh,
price.
yeah,
the
yeah.
format.
Yeah,
it
yeah,
looks like you're going to buy a Volvo.
Yeah.
You know, it's like choose your color.
Model year.
Yeah, model
color.
year. Pick your
Desired
look at-
orbit,
What
LEO.
orbit do you want?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you want
me see if I
sun
can
synchronous
zoom in
orbit?
here for you
You want
guys,
a low Earth orbit? You want a geosynchronous orbit? It's like
Yeah,
okay, select that. It is like buying a car.
Yeah.
And talk about a marketing approach. It's like it's harder for us to buy one of these cameras that we're using in terms of I need a quote. Like remember when I was talking about the fiber laser?
Mm-hmm.
I want to buy a fiber laser for some projects that we're going to be doing.
Yeah.
And it's expensive, but it's not ridiculous. And in order to be able to buy it, I have to sort of submit for a quote or
can
have
I,
a
can I look up
representative.
the site?
Oh, the Racus, you mean?
Racus.
Yeah,
Is
Racus,
that-
I think it
is
was.
Racus?
Racus fiber lasers. I'm interested in getting these fiber lasers, and we can get into lasers in a little bit.
Raycore fiber lasers?
I thought it was Racus, but yeah, that's it. I'm sure it is.
Oh, no,
yeah.
it is Racus. Yeah,
Right.
You're right.
You see the image up there, and you see these lasers
Types
are,
of
are
lasers,
getting
yeah.
really sophisticated, really powerful, and quite inexpensive. And the very smallest ones will cost you a couple of grand. I mean, they're not that high.
And I'm assuming the smallest ones are probably these.
Yeah,
these
like that
global
thing.
Series.
Yeah, 1,000 watts,
Almost
yes.
like, it almost looks like a rack mount server or something.
It is.
But yeah, one of these.
Right.
Yeah, I'll choose the first one that comes up here.
It's probably, my guess is, based on what I've heard, it's probably about $3,000, about $3,000. But you see, online consultation.
You have to click on that. You type your name, company, all this sort of stuff.
and they'll get back to you.
At some point, maybe, if they
Right.
think that you're legit or not.
Right, exactly.
I mean,
But
obviously, SpaceX is going to work the same way.
But if I wanted to take that laser and put it into orbit, I could just go on here and fill in the appropriate
right.
graphs and,
put the mass in here and it'll give you
Exactly.
a price. Yeah, what's
So-
the mass? 50 kilograms. Let's
Right.
go with that one. And 0.28 million.
$280,000,
Click the
and
button.
we're in orbit. Okay, so that saves
It's
time.
not going to be quite that easy.
It's
you don't,
kind of like
you don't
Amazon.
enter your credit card in there, MasterCard or Visa.
You know what? I bet you, Elon, if
No,
you're
there's no
watching,
way.
you need to do credit card
Yeah,
or
okay.
PayPal,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Exactly. So I think that's why the SpaceX thing is moving so fast, because they are looking at the commercial aspect. Like, we're going to build this because we know we can make money doing it, and we're going to build this fast so that we can make sure that nobody else can get up in front of us, and so nobody's going to go anywhere else because we're the only game in town. So it's kind of interesting. At the same time, he's got Tesla going on, and then he's got, the Boring Company.
Yeah, it's a good name for it.
Yeah,
Is it-
yeah. Well, that was something else.
That's the only thing that I don't like that he's done.
Yeah.
I don't know what you guys think, but what do you guys think? And I'll see if I can read
That's a
your
good
chats
one,
for a couple seconds. But what do you guys think of Elon's Boring Company? I don't know what you think about SpaceX or Tesla or anything like that, but the Boring Company.
Or even
do you
better
think that's
yet,
like a good?
What do you think is his worst idea?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, you already know what we probably think.
Okay, you could maybe we're wrong.
Yeah, okay.
But-
so what do you think Elon's worst, even if you think they're all good ideas, what do you think is his worst one?
His least good idea.
Okay, I got one here. Boring Company is a joke, totally misguided. Boring Company,
Right.
Boring Company is not viable. It does what the name says. It's
I
really
like that
hard
one.
because I'm getting a lot here. Thanks,
Yeah,
guys.
right.
Yeah, that.
So anybody else think of anything?
Buying
that's-
Twitter. Okay, buying Twitter. We got someone who doesn't like the Twitter thing, and sorry that we're on there now. Boring Hyperloop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Couple
Yeah.
of those. A couple I saw on here though is PayPal is the worst.
Isn't that how he
surprised by that.
originally made his money?
That is how he originally made his
Yeah,
money.
so it's kind of hard to say. Maybe
and
you don't like it as it exists.
yeah, right.
But was
Yeah,
it a
that could
bad
be.
idea for Elon, what he
Oh,
did?
well, none of them are a bad idea for Elon.
Okay. Well, the Boring
for-
Company isn't making any money, is it?
Well, I don't know if he lost money either, though. It's like, did it make, lose?
Well, when
And
you...
even if he did, say, okay, billions and it cost you millions, it's like, I don't know how much it cost him. I assume it probably cost
I
him
think
a
he's
couple
admitted
billion.
it himself.
but-
When you go on his... Because,
I showed you this.
Okay.
Don't let him
Right.
take credit for this.
Okay.
I showed him that, if you go on Elon's, and I'm not going to do it now because there's a bunch of political stuff on there.
Yeah.
But if you go like on Elon's Twitter page, he's almost always talking about SpaceX, Tesla.
Right.
And that's pretty much it.
and you
never
keep going
see
down,
Boring Company
and he
related
never
things.
talks about the Boring Company.
Yeah.
And it was interesting when I was
Yeah.
I was telling Alex, I said, look at how much stuff he's got here. Is like, how many people do you think he has on his staff that are just responsible for dealing with his Twitter page? And
No, it's just him.
You just-
I'm almost positive it's just him, but not just him like tweeting everything, but he's reposting tweets obviously from
Right.
SpaceX and from Tesla.
Right.
But I saw him on, and I assume a lot of you have probably seen him on Joe Rogan before. But I saw a couple clips of him on there where he said that he's on his phone like almost all the time in between his breaks, like when he's on his plane or anything like that.
Yeah, it's
he's
a
on
rough
his phone
life.
on Twitter posting
Right.
stuff, which makes sense why he would want to buy something like Twitter because he's always on there. Why
Yeah,
would he
that's
buy
true.
it if he didn't really know much about it? Or
right,
care?
no,
Yeah.
no, that's true. And the thing about that is kind of like how much time he must spend doing what he does on just his tweets compared to his waking hours. It's like either the guy doesn't sleep or
I don't think he sleeps.
I don't think he sleeps.
He probably doesn't sleep.
Has he
yeah.
been on Rogan recently?
No, and I think I think I told you that I think the last time he was on Rogan, I don't think he went. He might have went back on there again, but the last time that I saw him on Rogan, he got like very offended because Rogan didn't know about the two. If you guys know and you should. The two Falcon boosters that landed
yeah, right.
themselves back in the pads,
Right.
and it was like the first time that it happened.
Simultaneously
And it
going
was
down,
it was with the Falcon Heavy.
Yeah,
when they
okay.
launched that because it has the two side boosters and
Yeah.
then the main one, and the two landed themselves back on solid ground, not on
Right.
their
Recovery
I
ships
still
or-
love you.
Yeah, right.
Any of those, recovery ships.
Yeah.
They landed themselves, and Rogan had no idea that even existed.
Right.
And he saw the video, and he was like, "Oh my god, that's possible," and everything. And Elon was just, you could tell in his face, he was so disappointed that one of his like great friends of all time that he thought was like intelligent and followed his work and all that.
Right.
Didn't know of like one of the greatest accomplishments in the last like century.
Poor Elon.
Yeah. You could see on his face. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking if that's possible why he's not been in touch with Rogan as much
Yeah.
nowadays. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be.
I could be wrong.
Yeah. The other sort of like issue about the Boring Company and some of this other stuff is like he's made a bunch of strong moves, but every once in a while, you're going to make a bad move. But if overall most of the things that you do work, you're going to be a success,
Yeah.
and you're doing it at a huge scale. So the successes and the failures are pretty obvious to people. But I think the thing that like is so exciting about the SpaceX thing is within a year or two.
Yeah, and you can. By the way, we're not trying to be like Elon fanboys because I'm seeing a lot of like chats here saying Elon is an actor and we get f him, all that. It's like I get it. Yeah, like there's reasons that you would hate him, reasons that you would love him. And we're not fanboys, but we do like certain things that he's done, and we like to talk about those certain things that he's done. But
Right.
we'll make fun of him for things like the Boring Company that we don't
Right.
think it.
No, I
great.
do like what he's doing, even if you don't like his sort of like personality, even if
Yeah,
you don't
right,
like
right,
some of
right.
the political positions he takes. It's like looking at the business, it's working.
Yeah,
And I like what the potential that will open up for all of us, that you can go online and you can, with your credit card, put something into, hopefully, put something into orbit. I think that's fantastic. And I think one of the huge advantages of what they're going to be doing here is that once we have the ability to get things into space so inexpensively and so frequently, we're going to be able to do things that just weren't possible before. They just were too prohibitive. There's no value in putting up something that is just, so limited in its function, so lightweight. Whether we go to the moon, whether we go to Mars, whether we build large space stations, whether we increase the ability of satellites so that you have incredible data rates and bandwidths any place on the planet, all of these things are like, this is what I feed on. I mean, I love this kind of stuff. So I hope they are successful in this. It's fun to watch.
Yeah, I do too. But we're getting a few people who want us to stop talking about them. So we should probably move on at this point.
All right. One of the other things that we also wanted to talk about too is not just the topics, but maybe some of the videos that we've been doing, and maybe if some of you have questions about some of the things that we've done, and maybe we haven't followed up as well as you would have liked, or maybe as frequently. You can certainly put in questions about that. We'll also give you some ideas of some of the videos that we've got coming up that might be kind of interesting and what we're going to be spending our time on. As a matter of fact, when we're done with the live stream tonight, we're not done. We've got a couple of hours to work on that structure that you see behind Alex there.
Right up this thing.
Right there.
Behind me.
Yeah, that's a tornado machine. And we're going to be covering that probably within the next week or two. But that's one of the advantages of having the warehouse here is the fact that we can build really big 12 and a half, 13, 15-foot tall vortex generators, tornado machines, and show you how to do it and some tricks that we used in order to be able to build that. So that's going to be the rest of the evening when we're done.
Yeah, yes.
No rest for the wicked.
Well, maybe I'll take a 5-minute break after that.
Yeah, right.
But if you see with this, he said it was 12 and a half feet tall. What you see here, right at the top of the screen, is it's close to half. It goes up, it goes, but close.
Yeah.
That's almost double what you actually see behind me. The camera isn't angled quite right. So it's a lot taller than you think. And there's a lot that we'll have to also add to it. And I'm not sure if you can see it, but that thing behind Da's head there also goes with it. And I don't know if you want to do...
I'll put my finger on that side and on that side. This spider that you can't see well is the structure that sits on the top of it.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be doing that tonight, and we're going to be posting that video in maybe a week, maybe 10 days or so. So that's one of the projects that we have going on that's going to be coming up shortly. Working on the jet engine, too. We're going to be modifying the bike and going to a real jet engine, which is going to be kind of interesting. And also
dangerous.
Power takeoff, the ability to actually generate electricity using the jet engine. A lot of these small hobby jet engines produce thrust, but they don't produce electrical power that could be useful for other purposes. And what we're designing is something very similar to a Tesla turbine, but it isn't a Tesla turbine. It's sort of kind of an interesting take on that. So I think you might find that kind of interesting too. We're working on that. And then obviously there's the laser that I hinted at when we were doing the optical cleaning video. That's coming along very nicely. It's going to be pretty intimidating, and that's what also stimulated the idea in the fiber lasers that we want to do some more work, kind of return to our roots in the laser area.
Yeah. So and I see a lot of you are still talking about Twitter. It could be that you might be a little bit behind on the live stream, and you're just seeing that part now. But what I'm going to pull up here, since we're talking about current videos, not just the one that's coming up, but the ones that we've just recently posted. So, for example, our last one about the instruments, and where we were actually just in this warehouse. You can see my mouse over. It's kind of funny that it's weird seeing ourselves there. But if you guys have any questions about that video, or if you haven't seen it, you should take a look at it. But that's where we mentioned our Twitter page and what we were going to be doing with this live stream that you're now finally watching. If you have any questions about that, that would be a good one to ask about because we just posted it and it's fresh in our minds.
Right.
If there's anything else that you guys want to do any of there's a few here. Oh, any plans on further brewing or distilling videos?
Actually, that is one that has sat for a little while. One of the problems I have with that is it's almost like I think we've kind of covered it.
But there's always so much more. Just like what you're going to be doing with the jet bike.
Yeah, right.
It's like you've already covered it, you got it,
Right.
but now you're modifying it to do something else using the
Right.
same equipment.
Well, remember when we
And you-
used the reflux still to concentrate the lemon oil, and we had to cut the lemons?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, and please don't make me think. My
Yeah.
thumb, literally, you can't see it on the camera.
Workplace
but
injury.
my thumb, it's numb here. Like I have no nerves in this tiny little part of my
Yeah.
thumb here, and it's just from cutting lemons. I feel
Yeah,
like
right. We're dealing with jet engines and lasers and all kinds of liquid nitrogen, and it's it's the lemon that got him.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
in addition,
Like seriously, would we potentially do a different distilling video of some other kind of? Because we did the aging in the jars with
Right.
the what were those, like oak sticks or something
Yeah.
that you used? Like how did you age those?
That was
And would you ever do that differently? 'Cause
That's
it's-
a good question.
And that was a good comment. Whoever put that on there about, and I think there might have been a few about future distilling videos.
yeah, that's actually one of the things I've gotten a lot of questions over the last year or two about that, because what we did is we
Everybody
showed
likes that.
anybody who's not familiar with it, we fermented different types of alcoholic beverages, like, for example, beer-based or wine-based. In other words, something in order to produce a whiskey versus something to produce a brandy. Wine basically into brandy, beer basically into whiskey. And the wine was the Wargi, the banana-based brandy. And the beer-based is how we made the whiskey. And somewhere in between there, probably, I don't know what you'd call a sugar, but that's how we made the rum. But what we didn't really cover was a lot of these spirits, when they come out of the still, whether it's the most expensive ones you buy or the ones that we make, they're pretty harsh. They're flavorful. They've got some nice flavor for them, but they burn going down. And so a lot of people will try to age them. And the way the professionals will do it is they will place them into large barrels at relatively higher than final concentrations, 75%, 150 proof, 140 proof. And then over years, the flavors will gradually improve. And the argument behind that, the way that works, is that when you place the alcohol inside of the barrel and then you place it in an environmentally uncontrolled warehouse, so that it warms and it cools through the day, through the seasons. And so the temperature of the liquid, when it changes its volume. And when it gets cold, the volume decreases. And it pulls, through air pressure, it pulls the liquid out of the wood that's been saturated on the inner surface of the staves of the wood, of the barrel. And then when it warms, it pushes the liquid into the staves of the barrel. And so repetitively, the liquid is moving in and out and in and out through the barrel. And if they char the barrel with a small layer of effectively charcoal by burning them, they'll often pre-treat them with a blowtorch, or they can reuse charred barrels. It acts as an activated carbon, which then acts as a filter. So what it's doing is it's adding the flavors that come out of the wood. It's also filtering out a lot of the flavors. It's the balance between these two. And given the right time and the right starting liquid, right concentration of alcohol, you produce the final and very expensive spirits. A way to sort of cheat, and that's
To
what we were
speed up
doing,
the
to
process.
speed it up,
Yeah.
is because it's surface area versus volume. You got a huge barrel, got a lot of volume in it, and not that much surface area relative to the volume. So what they do is you get these sticks, pieces of wood, oak, cherry, apple, you choose it, and you can put them in fresh, virgin, or you can put them in an oven and you can char them, and then you place them into a jar, like a ball jar or a phyllo jar, and when you seal it up, the same sort of process occurs. Inside of the liquid, the temperature changes will allow the liquid to move inside and out of the sticks, but because of the very large volume, the surface area of the sticks, versus the very small volume of liquid, you get a much more rapid aging. You can get it to age in weeks or in months. And if you put it in, say, a sunlit window or something like that, you can make it even happen faster. Some people have tried doing this in ultrasounds. This is kind of where I'm going. And even used microwaves, microwave ovens. I'm not talking about like microwave radiation. I'm talking about heating and cooling cycles. in order to try to speed the process up. The downside is if you do something too fast, it's sometimes hard to control it. You know, you kind of get so fast that you can't pick that golden point when you want to stop. You can overdo it. And so one of the things that we would like to look into is using the large ultrasound that I demonstrated in that last video on the optics cleaning to take small quantities of these oak sticks and use the bubbles that are formed inside the ultrasound to speed up the process. I think that would be something that we should follow up on because it's new. A lot of people have been interested in it and still related and basically finishes up the process.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree.
That'd be interesting.
And I was trying to find, I thought you did put it in, I thought we put it in one of these videos, but I was trying to find the aging process in one of these old ones, and I couldn't find it.
I thought it was in the second one we did on whiskey. I
was looking flavored rum.
No, it was in the whiskey when we were still doing it on the back deck of the house.
Oh, okay.
You remember when we were using the small Ambec?
Yeah, and there was a related one.
Lambic. Still.
Reflux. Yeah, whiskey easy. Yeah, now I remember.
That was it.
Now I remember.
Yeah.
Man, this was so long ago.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Now I remember.
And if you move over a little bit, you'll see near the end where I've got the jars. And that's basically how we decided that we were going to age this.
This was part one.
Part two. We've done a lot of these.
Yeah. And man, you look a lot different, and everything looks different. I think that this is where you're using those same sticks here.
Right. And you can like Stillet is a great channel.
Yeah, and that's where you get the idea from, right?
Yeah, he even gives you recipes for the wood. Like he'll teach you, put it in this temperature for this long, and then, put it in the jars, and then you got to taste it every so often to make sure that it's just right. But that's where I learned that. And that's one of the things I like to do is I like to watch a lot of the other channels. Backyard Scientist, Nighthawk and Light, Veritasium,
Smarter Every Day.
Yeah. I like to watch Nile Red, all of these other videos because I'm not trying to steal ideas, but they stimulate other thoughts.
You're like, oh, what if I took that idea and did it with my own reflux still?
Exactly. So it's sort of, it's a bit competitive, but it's also like a friendly competition. Like I think that thing that we did with Nighthawk and Light with the paint, where he first gave me the idea of this, super high performance paint. We were both independently aware of this process from the papers, from the research papers. He proceeded to make an attempt at doing this, did a pretty good job. I took it back and did a little bit of a different modification. He's recently upgraded that to an even easier and maybe safer way to do this. That is the kind of like feedback. I love that kind of competition because you end up with a lot more ideas than you would have come up with on your own and fixes some of the problems that you had inherent with your process. That's fun. And that's why I like watching other people's material because they stimulate ideas that allow you to improve what you're doing.
But plus, it also, one good thing about it is it also gives reason for people to go back and forth between the two channels and see who did a better job of it. And I'll copy that one for my own project, not necessarily like for video making, but to do their own, and the back and forth, having competition leads to better ideas.
Right.
If there was no competition, you just half-ass it, and it's like, it kind of worked.
And you wouldn't know it. Even if you want to do the best job you can, it's like you don't know. So there's more minds working on the same problem, and you end up with a better result.
But also what's good, is since people are commenting back and forth, is it gave us the idea, and a bunch of people commented about this before, is who we should have as a guest for our first guest that we have on here. And
it will not be Elon, even if he wants to.
I think if he wants to,
if he wants to, he can force us, but you know what I mean.
I think most likely it would be one of those Smarter Every Day, Nile Red, any of those types that someone on here, and I missed it, but someone said, I know of all the channels that you just listed there, or I'm subscribed to all the channels that you just listed. So any of those people, whoever it is, that wants to potentially join us, and maybe not even be here in person, but do something like online with us, would be a fantastic addition to this sort of simplistic format.
And here's the other trick: is like if we brought somebody in from a local industry, like BAE Industries or something like that, or like, you know, somebody who's good at some sort of
Yeah.
specialty in this area. That'd be kind of an interesting interview. But all of these content creators are content creators. They have the
Right.
cameras, they have the know-how, they know how to present themselves, they know they're comfortable in front of a camera. That would be a very easy transition to have a guest that's already a pro at what, you know, you're doing. So it would be a very easy interface. And so, no, you don't have to travel all the way here to New England in order to sit in the chair. You know, that's not a requirement. It's nice, and we'd, you know, take you out to dinner. But I think if we did things online, that would be a very big leverage. And so you give us your suggestions, and if they're not watching, we'll probably reach out to people who might be interested in joining us.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk to people about this.
Something I know it's a little off topic, but it was a super chat from a while ago,
Okay.
and it's about to expire.
Oh, okay.
But someone said something interesting. I don't know if we would ever do anything like it, but they say, love your work. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
But 2 video ideas. 1, body armor. Any creative ideas to keep it monetized? Yeah, so that would always be like a risk, is that we'll get demonetized because YouTube doesn't like guns or even saying the word.
Yeah, right.
They don't like that. But the second one was running a generator/car on Cygnus. Cygnus. Maybe you know what that is. Cygnus.
I can't read it from there.
Well, I come closer.
Hang on a second.
What is that?
Oh, syngas. I guess
Syngas,
like synthetic
okay.
gas, almost like wood gas.
Oh, okay, that makes more
Yeah.
sense. Okay. From wood or charcoal,
Yeah.
maybe with a superheated steam cracking. For those with more wood than sunlight. yeah. If you live in Alaska or something.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. The first one, you're right about the monetization limitation. You know,
Yeah.
a number of things that we want to do, like we've done with the rocket engines, we get a little close.
Yeah,
With
well,
the
yeah.
explosions, like the detonation that got us a visit from the Men in Blue, we're always kind of on that bitter edge. One of the things about body armor is a video that I'm actually planning to do, but it's not body armor. It's electronic armor. I don't know if any of you are aware of the fact that armor is both passive and active.
Like reactive explosive
Reactive
armor.
explosive
Yeah,
armor.
Yeah.
And it's possible, and I don't know where I read about this as a potential, I'm not inventing this, but it's kind of like the graphene issue, where there is some research, but it's not been pursued very far, about the idea of creating armor that actually electronically can destroy bullets and projectiles. And the advantage of this is that it's incredibly light. It would be as light as a piece of paper and could potentially stop very, very powerful rounds. And there are some downsides to it, but it also may...
Well, what are some of the downsides? I'm like genuinely interested in it. Like,
You want
now
one,
we're talking
right?
about armor.
Okay, yeah, right.
I like
He's the
this,
shooter.
yeah.
Right. But the one of the downsides is that, like all reactive armor,
Yeah.
you fire a bullet at it or you fire a projectile at it,
Yeah.
it reacts, and now it's no longer usable. It's sort of a one-time shot.
Okay.
In an electronic armor, you fire a projectile at it, and there are modifications, but it is sort of an inherent issue with something that has to react. It's like you might just damage it in the reaction. The same thing with the electronic armor is that when you effectively use a large capacitance and you drive it between 2 very narrowly placed sheets like this, metal, plastic, metal, put them in a sandwich, run about 20,000 volts of potential through the 2 metal plates, and it'll sit there just happy. But you fire a bullet at it, and as soon as you make contact and you begin to penetrate the plastic insulation, you now close the circuit, and you effectively dump gigawatts and potentially thousands of joules into the very small spot that the bullet hits. It vaporizes the bullet. And the reason it's sort of a one-time deal is once you've made a hole in the sheet, well, then it's no longer good.
In the sheet.
Anywhere in the sheet,
okay.
It's gone. The argument to defend against that is because it's so light, you can place a sheet like this and then maybe a piece of foam, wood, Kevlar, and another sheet with another circuit to allow you to stop multiple rounds.
Right. Well, and that's how normal a lot of body armor, not most, but a lot of body armor are those sort of like hexagonal pieces
Like
that
the
they put inside.
right,
of,
right.
Inside of there.
Dragon plate, I think, is
So
the name
when
of one of those. Yeah.
it gets damaged, or a few of them get damaged, it
Right.
doesn't affect the other ones because it's not one just ballistic shield.
Right.
That once that gets damaged,
It limits the damage.
the structural
extent.
integrity of the entire plate,
Correct.
not just a small region.
Right.
So your idea of either doing it back to back, where
Right.
you have different plates, but also why couldn't you do what you have with your papers, but then just split it up? Into
You could. That's
some
the other way you
segments?
could do it.
Yeah,
You could
right,
do
right.
it in the same plane.
Yeah.
The other potential value of this, and I think it may be even more, and this gets back to your monetization question, is
Okay.
it doesn't have to be just to protect you from a bullet out of a gun. This might be an excellent method to protect satellites and any kind of spaceborne structures where they may be faced with some sort of space debris once every
I
6
see.
months. And because it can be built at a few grams per square meter, this would allow you to put up ballistic quality armor for almost no weight just by electronically charging it. And that is what I think might be very attractive as a method for protecting spacecraft in keeping with the idea of space flight and Starlink and SpaceX.
Someone just said Musk debris, and
Yeah, right. I bet she's
Yeah,
putting
yeah.
up more
There we go,
debris
yeah.
than anybody else, too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And sorry guys if I'm not like always reading each one of your questions, and you don't have to super chat for me to read one of them. It's just whenever I'm looking on here, it's like it's going by so fast. So anytime I happen to glance over and I see a good one,
Yeah,
I just
right.
steal that, and then we can talk about it.
Right.
So you might have had a good one that passed us by, and it's not because it wasn't good. It's just I didn't see it.
We apologize. Yeah.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
don't have extra staff to be able to
Yeah,
go through
right.
these things and collate them in a moderator. Maybe that is something.
And yeah, a lot of people recommended having a moderator on there, but I don't want to do it just on the fly right now. Assign some random person as a moderator,
Right.
and then now we're getting a bunch of.
But it is a
weird
good
stuff.
suggestion. We may look into that.
Yeah.
Both, when we post these, what the schedule should be, maybe how we can line up a good moderator to lean this down a little bit so that we can run a little more efficiently.
Yeah,
Appreciate
right.
that. Yep.
Yeah.
We're in the very steep part of the learning curve. How long did this take us to get kind of going? When we said, let's try this, and then we started.
You're talking about the live stream, not
Yeah.
just YouTube. In
Yeah,
general.
this.
Yeah. Well, we had the idea for a long time, but we always thought, oh, it's going to be too difficult, which it sort of is too difficult. I think
don't
that's-
do this.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, don't do. But I'd say probably, when did we get serious? Where I the first when I started ordering stuff and we started
Right.
thinking about how are we going to set it up, where are we going to set it up? Probably
3 months ago.
3 months ago.
3 months
Yeah.
ago. Yeah.
I'd say that's
Yeah.
about right. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you accumulate cameras, and then you find out that they're not the right cameras.
Right. And figure out how does even doing this video switching that I'm doing right now, how does that even work? And how do you set it, have video cameras that are not made for this sort of setup? How does it interact with all of the equipment that you get? Is it going to interact well? Because some things are made by all these strange companies that I've never heard of before, and then some are big ones, like this Rodecaster thing that we use for our regular
Well,
mics
those
now.
cameras, you said those are the same ones that Rogan uses.
Yeah, and turns out Rogan uses an older version of these.
Oh, that's why our video.
cameras.
Okay, go on. But
Yeah.
but that, for example, that's how I think you finally ended up selecting that one
Right,
because
right.
you figured it was probably a safe bet.
Yeah, I didn't originally though, and see
Yeah.
that's why this takes a long time. Is the cameras that we got before this were by a different brand and cheaper, and what you would normally think you would want to use for a live stream, but they were so complicated and weren't working right.
The white
I just
balances weren't working,
yeah.
and
And
they
even
were
the white balance isn't fully perfect. And
Yeah.
so for our next stream, hopefully you'll see improvements for
right.
every
So about
upcoming stream.
About 3 months,
But
and
3
then the
months, and
lighting,
then the
and then
lighting, yeah, that was
making sure
another
that you
thing,
had
yeah.
that, and then all of the controls and everything like that, and just figuring out some of the software, because it's not the same as when you upload a video. You kind of upload to your channel, and YouTube kind of takes it from there, and that's kind of it. With this, there's all the preliminaries of you have to select, if this is going to be, unlisted, if this is going to be, private and public, and then all the rest of it. So it does take a little bit of time to get up to speed, but a moderator is a good idea.
Yeah, moderator is. And supposedly some people are complaining about me keep touching it because I keep touching the mic.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I have to be a little bit more careful. And I like moving around though, and I'd prefer you guys to be able to hear me than for me to not touch the mic, and then I get too quiet when I start backing up here. So
Yeah, I have the
there's
advantage
little
that I don't have
things
to
you
do that, so
figure
I'm
it
always
out,
here, and my voice is always about the same level. But that's one of the issues of the mic, and one of the things that we also did, like you saw in the other video when we just did the lead into this, the trailer, the advertisement on the previous video.
Previous video.
We had a third chair here, so that if we had a guest, we would have a third chair. We also have a third boom, a third microphone, another camera. So it's like we have all of that with the idea that if we're going to do it, we want to, order all the stuff at the same time, so then we don't end up mixing and matching model numbers. So there's sort of a lot of thought that went into kind of like getting ourselves up to speed in order to be able to do this.
Yeah.
So please keep sending in the suggestions and things. It's not a criticism. It's not going to hurt our feelings. The fact that you're bothering to spend the time, I appreciate that. And if we can make this a little smoother and make it a little bit more fun for you guys to watch, that's the whole idea.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah, we exhausted a lot of stuff here, but let's move on to something else. So we're not just talking about ourselves, and we're not just talking about SpaceX. Let's see if we can, I'll put up display capture here so you guys can see what I'm looking at. It's mostly random stuff, unless there's something else scientific that anybody else wants to see.
I'd like to take a look at the chats, because I think one of the things that we probably haven't done enough is enough feedback.
Well, I got one here right now.
Okay.
So will you do part 2 of the optics video?
The optics cleaning video?
Yeah,
I'm assuming?
I'm not sure. So if Unlokia, sorry if I pronounce your name wrong, but if you could clarify what you mean by part 2 of the optics.
Yeah, because if you mean the optics cleaning, that we're done with that. I mean, I think I pretty much covered how to clean the optics. If you mean the laser, then that's coming.
Unless they're referring to poor man's clean room, but that's...
Well, that's what they are referring to.
Right, okay.
And I'm assuming, because I said in the beginning, the reason that we did that video then was because we didn't want to sort of lose the opportunity to show the parts before they were locked into the laser.
Sure, okay.
So I don't know if he can clarify that, but sure.
Sure. Part two on graphene production.
Yeah, that's actually a good one. At the end of the video, I commented that there was a little bit of a problem with a batch process of producing graphene. As successful as that method is, when you have to do it in batches, you can't produce it in the ton quantity. There was a gentleman, Abanul Islam, I think was the name of the gentleman. He was the second paper that I put down in the listing in the description for a batch, for a continuous process that produces graphene using the same sort of equipment that is used for plasma spraying.
Is it one of these two? Links referenced at the end of the video? Would it be Nature or Pub's ACS?
I can't remember.
You
can always click on it, but I think it was the second one. No, that's not it. That's not it. No, it's the other one.
This is the only other one.
Ultra-fast chemical free. Right, right, that's the one. Yep. And the method involves taking a plasma spraying process where effectively what you do with that is you get a container, a vat, of powdered material, often metal, and it is sucked in under pressure and vacuum. In other words, there's a Venturi type of effect as well as a pressurized container, and it actually, in some cases, has a vibrator in there that sort of shakes the powder so it doesn't bind up. And then the powder is introduced into the plasma spray. If you're not familiar with how a plasma gun works, is that they will take a high-pressure gas, like, say, argon, nitrogen, can even be air, and you will induce an arc between a central electrode and a surrounding cylindrical electrode like this. And the arc in the space between those two electrodes is where the plasma is generated. And then the high-pressure gas pushes that hot plasma outward. And you can use it as a plasma cutter, but also you can introduce not only gas, but you can introduce particles. And his method was that you would introduce graphite, a carbon source. And under the extreme temperature of the plasma, it was able to break down the carbon-to-carbon bonds and effectively produce carbon. And I think in their case they used argon. It might have been nitrogen, but it's not oxygen. So that what happened was the extremely hot carbon, as it moves farther and farther from the gun, it begins to cool. And as it does, just like in the process where we showed you in the glass tubes, it's in the cooling that the magic occurs, and the carbons begin to rearrange themselves into graphene molecules and then spray into a container that sort of cools and stores it. So it can be just a big metal box with cooled walls. And they can produce graphene at very, very large quantities. And apparently, based on the paper, if you read it, pretty high percentages. That is the method that requires a plasma spray setup to modify it to be able to do this. Yes, we will be proceeding with doing that to see what kind of productivity, but that potentially offers the opportunity to produce something in much higher quantities and at the same time isn't that much beyond what an amateur can do or a small laboratory can do. So yes, we are going to pursue that.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah.
And sorry, I've been reading a bunch here.
Okay.
I've gotten a few.
What else?
Can you link to the paper? We just pulled it up here, but if you look at the description of the video, "Making Graphene Could Kill You."
Yeah, right.
Great title, right? If you look at the bottom there, there's 2 links to the articles that he's referring to.
Yeah, the one article is the Rice article that we based our project on. The other article is the Aminul Islam article, is out of the University of India, Patna.
ACS Publications.
Right, that one.
Yeah.
So read it. It's a good read. It's
yeah.
You know, it's a little bit technical, like all scientific papers are, but you get the idea very quickly on it. It does sound pretty exciting.
That's interesting. Okay, well, we got a super chat, but a video on precipitating carbon out of seawater, and goal being for the ocean to take more carbon out of the air.
Precipitating carbon out of seawater?
It says precipitating carbon out of seawater.
Yeah, I'm not too sure about that. One of the issues that you have with any of these sort of carbon sequestering type of experiments or industrial approaches is the energy requirements are often very, very high because you're not talking about very concentrated sources of carbon dioxide. The result being that you have to process a lot of material, and even if you have a very efficient process, you're talking about huge quantities of energy to sequester the carbon. My personal feeling is probably the best, sort of most elegant method involves biologicals, either through seaweed or algae or trees or
like
plants.
Stimulating growth of those.
Using sunlight as our energy source and using photosynthesis as our means of doing the conversion. We can pull a lot of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, and then what do you do with it is maybe the question.
That's so funny that you, sorry to interrupt, but that's funny that you said that because Thomas Newman just here said the best method for getting carbon is algae farms.
Yeah.
Natural selection.
And didn't Cody's lab, he built some algae harvesting equipment. Kind of like the same approach that Nighthawk and Light and I do, where we try to say, can we build this for less than $10 approach? And I think what he did is he took a whole bunch of plastic water bottles, soda bottles, water bottles, fabricated these long plastic tubes on a tray, mounted them sort of like you would a solar panel in the sunlight, and then had a small recirculating system for water to grow algae, to see how efficiently you could produce biomass using the sunlight available as the only energy source. And that is very intriguing, because when you think about it, it's like, how much power do you need to power a little pump, which could be a solar panel, and the sunlight that's already around us? I think it is a very intriguing way to do that. And in addition to that, you might be able to do things with the growth of the algae that can also purify the water, because I think that's another method that they're looking for, removing heavy metals from water, because just like we were talking about with biological sequestration, is the fact that it will concentrate these heavy metals into a very nice compact place where you can then either remove it directly or just, landfill it or launch it into space or whatever we want to do with it. But I think that could have a dual effect. And it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, just like I heard about it a long time ago, and it could be just some fun story that isn't really practical, but they were bioengineering like microorganisms or maybe larger ones, but that would consume styrofoam. I think something
Yeah,
like
like
that.
plasticophiles or something
right,
like that.
right. Yeah, exactly. Things like that, where it's like the solution is organic. It's not to try to manufacture some large scale industrial process to
Right.
deal with the problem.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's almost like LEDs and organic OLEDs, that sort of thing. It seems like
Okay.
as we're getting more and more sophisticated technology, we're almost moving backward into the idea of like using the organics and the sort of structure of like life to guide us to do a lot of the things that we used to have to use stone tools and metal hammers to do.
Right.
So the LEDs and the OLEDs on your screen that are so nice, the biologicals that
Right.
they're looking to purify water.
And
Yeah.
and sometimes that works, but like when they were first trying to make planes, when you see those, or even now when some people are trying to make planes, yeah, they're basing them off of birds, and it's like, well, what do
Ornithopters.
birds do?
Yeah,
they
right.
flap, so just do that.
Right.
But that's not always the case. But
Yeah.
you can take some of
Right,
what's
and
in
that's what we
nature,
do. I mean, that's the
yeah.
scientific method: is like observe, find a pattern, make a theory,
Trial and error.
experiment,
Okay, well, that's
reach a
trial and
conclusion, reset.
error. Oh, okay.
That's the scientific method. And it's like the first step, the most important step is observation,
Yeah.
and then the imagination that allows you to find a pattern or something like that. And so, we can imagine all these things. And then the experiment is where you prove that the wings on your ornithopter fall off and the propeller doesn't. So,
right. I wear my sunglasses all night. Okay.
Yeah, right. No.
Thanks. It's if you had to see all the lighting in here, I'm surprised Da here isn't blinded by it.
I think ever since the injury, I'm less sensitive to
Yeah,
it,
right. But also my brother here, Paul, was in here, and he kept complaining about the lighting in here.
Yeah.
And first, these are prescriptions, so I can actually see the screen over there. But yeah, the lighting in here is, if you're not used to it, you would get annoyed after 20 minutes.
Right.
I don't know how you're.
Yeah, I don't know if you've
with
seen our shop and our
Yeah,
laboratory and
yeah,
everything.
and I've complained about that always,
I've always
yep.
tended to go for very, very high lighting,
let me see if I can
and
find
it's
that.
almost like surgical level lighting. I just like a lot of light.
Yeah, you can see here, in it's because we never really, like, in any of the shots that you see from the videos in the barn, you don't really see the lighting up above, but we just adjust the cameras to work with the lighting that we have.
Right.
Which usually it works out well because it's bright enough that, oh, wait, sorry. There you go. Now that you can see it above my head. It looks totally normal. And here we have like a similar lighting setup.
Right.
But if you were in that room, you would think it's far too bright. It's like,
Right.
it is really like a scientific lab.
Yeah.
Even though it has wooden walls and styrofoam
Yeah.
on a couple other
Yeah,
ones.
I love
and
lighting.
You still haven't put the doors in. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Things like that.
Right. But no, I think the lighting is key. And I think to be able to see stuff and then be able to filter it out is better than trying to pick, detail out of the noise. So I've always liked that.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the background, because a couple of you are asking questions about maybe you haven't seen it yet or that part of this live stream. But the thing in the background here, the tornado chamber, that's going to change. That's not always going to be there once the video is made, once we construct
Right.
it. We might eventually take it back down or leave it somewhere else in the warehouse as sort of a side thing that we can always restart again.
Right.
But in the future, whenever you join us on the live stream and we have a new upcoming video, you'll probably see some of the things that we're
Different
doing
things that
in
we're
the
doing.
background.
Right.
Because I got a couple questions about the motorcycle back there and stuff like that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And in addition, not only will you see, that stuff change, but you may even see things that you recognize, because sometimes it won't be the stuff that we're going to do. It might be stuff that we have done. So you might say, oh, yeah, there's the propeller-powered bicycle in the background
right.
or something like that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so actually about that propeller-powered bicycle, how
Yeah.
are you going to take that apart to add the jet engine? And actually, while you answer that, can I wheel it over here?
sure, whatever you want to.
I want to wheel it.
Oh, yeah,
here.
yeah. Okay.
So people can see what I'm talking about instead of pulling up a video.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
So if you have seen that video, we did a couple of funny videos with that, with the Stig. We put him on there and drove the thing around. And it's basically a fairly simple, it looks like a little bit like a paramotor trike, where you have a propeller, motor-powered propeller on the back behind the rider. It's a three-wheeled bicycle that allows you to push the air back and to move forward as opposed to driving the wheels. And you can see just in the picture behind me right now, pretty clearly the rear end of the bicycle. And in that image, the motor and the propeller are pretty bulky and pretty heavy. And I was trying to find ways that we could improve that, make it a little bit lighter, a little bit smaller. Yeah, that's a good image. Maybe back it up just slightly. Perfect. Yeah, just like that. That's perfect. Yeah, you got a good view. What we're going to do is, you know that I've done a few videos on jet engines. And we're looking at incorporating a jet engine on the back, a very compact one. That would allow us to drive it with something that weighs about 5 kilograms instead of something that weighs about 25 kilograms. This will make it actually ride a little bit better, make it a little bit smaller. It might be a little bit louder, but also pretty cool with the smell of kerosene in the background. And one of the sort of things that we found that was somewhat problematic is with all the weight in the back, it changes the balance of the bicycle pretty significantly. Taking weight off that front wheel, which makes the instability of tadpole bikes, I guess that's often what they call them, where the two wheels in the back and the front is a single wheel, kind of like the old kid's tricycle or the old person's bicycle where they're going to the market with a flower basket. It's not a very stable structure. Much more stable is the two wheels in front and one wheel in the back, like you can see in some three-wheel motorcycles. Problem is, those don't allow you to put the propeller in the back because the wheel's in the way. That's why we ended up building it this way. But what makes it even worse is when you put a bunch of weight behind the passenger or the driver, you then take even more weight off of the front, which makes it even less controllable. You get up to about 50 kilometers per hour, and you feel like, ooh, I need a helmet.
Especially when you try to turn.
You got to turn gently and all the rest of it. So getting the weight low, getting the weight forward is really what we need to in order to try to control the tendency of the thing to tip when we make a sharp turn.
So since I was sort of getting it into view here, exactly how are you going to take this off, and where are you going to put the jet engine exactly, if you could point to it?
Okay, if you see the propeller and the motor, it's sitting on a small platform, and that may be a little bit difficult to see because the motor is covering it. But that platform is in a perfect position and large enough for us to put the entire jet engine on top of it. So it'll look like a coffee can, about that big, on top of that platform. That's it. Real small, real compact. And I love the smell of kerosene. I mean, there's just...
Yeah, I've always loved the smell of gasoline, diesel, and, well, kerosene's good too.
Yeah, right. So that's another project that we'll be following up on. And then, like I said, the modification of the Tesla turbine, a way to generate power with the jet blast that doesn't require precision machining, extremely high velocities, is quite efficient and pretty easy for an amateur to put together rather than trying to produce some sort of a turboprop, multi-stage turbine power extraction system. That was the problem that I was facing in trying to incorporate power takeoff to a jet engine. It's actually pretty tough because of the speeds involved and the gearing involved. And then one of the other things that we will be doing in the background you may see is that we're building a synthetic aperture telescope. And you don't know about this one yet, but it's something that I actually did about 30 years ago when we were still in Chicago and I was doing work with telescopes. I've worked with telescopes like with lasers for a long time. And the fact is you can build telescopes of very large aperture by doing the same sort of thing that radar systems do, say, on submarines and in many fighter jets, where you combine very small telescopes to produce the resolution of a telescope as large as the array. This is done all the time in radio astronomy, where they will take, like if you look up the VLA, for example, where they will take individual radio telescopes and they will combine the output of each of those different radio telescopes into a single image.
Very large array?
Yeah. You see that image? That's probably good enough just to show it like this.
Bring it up. There you go, guys.
Yeah.
Should be able to see that.
If all of those individual telescopes operate in phase with each other and look at the same image, they not only gather the light that each one of the apertures can collect from the universe, but they can also increase the sharpness, the detail that you can see that is limited by the nature of light, by diffraction, typically, to the diameter of the telescope. The way resolution is determined is the diameter of your telescope, not the length of the telescope. And that diameter effect is the ratio between the diameter and the wavelength. So if you got a very big diameter and a very short wavelength, and you got a very large ratio, you're going to have very sharp images. Radio telescopes, because they work with such a long wavelength, have a very small ratio between the diameter of the telescope and the wavelength. So they have very poor resolution. They can't see a lot of detail. However, if you take multiple telescopes and they all operate in concert, in other words, coherently, they can increase the resolution of the imaging to the overall aperture of the array. I think they have 34 telescopes or 40 telescopes that can be positioned and targeted and combined. The problem...
Well, number of antennas 28.
28, okay. Well, that's been sort of a holy grail or potentially a true sea change that would be available to optical astronomy, but it's much tougher because the alignment of the optics and the phasing of the collectors has to be done also proportionate to the wavelength. So when you get down to wavelengths that are less than a micron as opposed to meters, you have to align everything and you have to space everything at that level of precision. It's been done. For example, the very large telescopes down in Paranal with the European Southern Observatory, each one of these 10 8-meter telescopes have been combined in short-term, very experimental operation to phase the individual images of each of these 8-meter telescopes, allowing them to produce a resolution 10 or 20 times greater than the resolution that's available for each one of the individual apertures. And when you get to the size of, multi-meter telescopes, not only does the cost go up on the order of cube or fourth power with aperture, but also you eventually reach hurdles where you can't transport it anymore. You can't make it anymore. You can't clean them anymore. They just become too big to manage. And the only way to move beyond that is with interferometry. And what I'm going to demonstrate is in the laboratory, I'm going to show you how this can actually be done with relatively simple optics. You just have to know kind of how to approach it, but it's not actually that difficult to do. And we're going to show you that it actually does work. That I'm actually looking forward to, and we're going to be setting that up in here because we need the floor space and the distance in order to be able to prove it.
Yeah, it is nice having all this extra space.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. So I was listening, but I was also watching, and some people made some interesting points, not all related.
About my jet?
That too.
Yeah, right.
But I think we're going to be signing off here pretty soon. We've been going for 2 hours now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It does go pretty fast.
Man, I only thought it was here for about a half hour, literally.
Yeah. So we're probably going to sign off fairly soon, probably in the next 10 minutes. So if you guys, if there's something that you really need us to talk about talk to us about, let us know now, because if you don't get it in now, we'll probably miss it.
Let's see what we can get through here while we're talking here.
Well, but I want to talk about something different. Yeah, so nothing the same. We need something new. But,
I don't want to start a whole new topic because I really think that one of the things that we really do need to do is I want to get more feedback and answer questions.
That's what I'm.
So if you can pick up something that people want to talk about, I'd rather spend what time we have going through that.
Waste heat recovery, good show. Vertical farming on mobile tracks. Sunlight regulation. Okay, no. Trying to get something from you guys that we sort of know about, that so we're not just guessing at something that we would know about.
Okay.
Yeah, but a lot of these levitation, Discord when it's there's
okay.
There's only so much that I can get from one of these. Question: the catamaran boat. Is there any updates with that? Actually, that's a good point. So the catamaran boat.
Yeah.
We haven't used that since the video. We haven't done anything.
Well,
with
we
that.
did. We actually did it twice. But
Fair enough.
Okay, but within such a short period of time, it doesn't count.
Yeah.
But since then, yeah.
But since then, we still have the battery for it.
Right.
So that's a potential.
Right.
But also, if you're thinking about maybe we do something simpler than the catamaran boat.
Right.
But say you were taking that off the jet bike thing here.
Yeah, we got propulsion.
If you're taking that motor and the propeller off and everything, why not use that? And I saw a while ago, but I didn't even think of it. Someone said something about like jet-powered canoe or something like that.
Right.
You could get a small boat of some sort or use the catamaran since it's so lightweight.
Right.
And instead then just mount that motor and that
Right.
propeller on it.
That'd be kind of interesting.
And
An
we have
airboat.
all the parts
Right.
and everything. And I think that would be a fun video and easy to do.
Yeah, one of the things that we did, and I do sort of apologize for the fact that we developed a couple of methods that we were thinking of using as alternative drives for that that boat. I don't know if you remember where we said we were going to kind of go back in time in order to modernize the boat. And we were going to be using one of these extended propeller drives, remember?
Oh, yeah.
Remember?
The, what do they call it? Mud motors?
The mud
You call
motor.
them mud
yeah.
motors. And I
The
think
mud
you
motor.
still have that.
And I
don't you?
still have it.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I actually built the fixtures to be able to mount it. And we did a video on the fact that unlike, say, the individual trolling motors where they could do the
Right.
lateral forces to steer it, we then had to incorporate the rudders. And so I showed everybody how we built
Right.
the rudders
Yeah.
with the idea that we may propel the boat with motors like this or jets or the mud
exactly.
motor
That was the whole idea.
that can't steer.
Yeah.
They drive essentially straight forward, so you now have to incorporate the rudders. And we even have the little hand controls and all the rest of that stuff.
Yeah, I totally forgot about all that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and-
that was a good comment.
And one
Thanks.
of the problems was the buddy that you had who had the house on the lake. That
Yes,
Lake
yep. Not Winnipesaukee.
no, well,
That's
like
the big one.
Whitney, something like that. It's in Vermont.
Yeah, somewhere in northern Vermont.
Yeah.
I'll see if I can.
He had his family had a cabin on there with nice access to the lake.
Yep.
It's a big,
and they use it for
relatively-
an Airbnb now. I
Yeah,
think.
right, exactly. And now, since he's moved away, did he join? Who did he join?
He now works at SpaceX, and I don't want to give their names since
Right.
they
Don't
probably
do
wouldn't-
that,
but
right.
Yeah, wouldn't want to. He works at SpaceX. And all the friends that were at that lake house.
Yeah, that were standing there,
Yeah,
right.
one works at SpaceX.
Right.
And he's the one that owned that place.
Right.
The other one works at Raytheon.
Right.
Another one worked at SpaceX for a while, but now they work somewhere else.
Who was the guy that did the internship? He did it at Lawrence Livermore or Fermi. Remember?
No one did Fermi Labs or anything.
Internship, and then he took. Oh,
Maybe one of your friends. Yeah. It's like, what a great group of friends. Though.
Right.
That's pretty good.
Fun
Well,
friends.
who was the one who worked at Fermi Labs, and who was the one that worked at SpaceX?
and really, we're not name dropping. I can't remember,
yeah,
but I thought it was the tall guy.
No, the tall guy was the one that worked at SpaceX for a short time.
Okay.
And he was actually, I can't.
Don't
I can't
say names.
I don't
No,
know, because
hold back.
they would know if they're watching.
Right.
They would know who I'm talking about. But they're all in the same sort of field.
Right.
Those either military sort
Contracting,
of geared
suppliers,
contractors
high-tech
or
industries.
space-related things.
Right.
Yeah.
As well as the fact that now that we don't have access to that lake, we have to find another location to do that. Not that we can't do it. I mean, there are many lakes around this area.
I found the lake. It's Lake Willoughby.
Willoughby. Yeah, that's right. I remember. It's a beautiful lake. That was a wonderful place. But no, I do apologize for the fact that we didn't really follow up, and we kind of went 80% of the way to be able to do those videos.
Yeah.
But we just have to kind of get together, and those guys helped us to kind of get everything set up. So
Yeah, and was there something that caused us to not continue? Because we have
no,
all the parts.
I think
and they still
basically
work.
just
We
other
something
videos
else
and
came
stuff.
up. Yeah. Okay.
So all the parts, we could put the boat together in probably 45 minutes and mount the new motor on it in probably a day. So no, we'll get to that. Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see if is there going to be a follow-up to the shaking buildings over a mile away video where you blew up the hydrogen balloon?
Well,
Always
kind of
could
like,
be, but after
right.
your injury, I'm not sure you'd be so keen
I
on
am a
blowing up
little.
stuff.
I've still had a few nightmares about that, but the point is, yes and no. In a sort of the way that hydrogen bombs went to like potentially controlled fusion. I've finished, and I'm sort of like working on some of the instrumentation for detonation engines, basically pulse detonation engines. If you're not familiar with them, most internal combustion engines, you put fuel, oxygen together, they conflagrate. In other words, they burn subsonically. They produce the hot gas, they produce the power. Detonation engines, where essentially you produce an explosion that moves supersonically, has very interesting characteristics in very efficient conversion of thermal chemical energy into usable work. Pulse detonation engines are very similar to pulse jet engines. These are around Maddox, I think, is a guy that builds all of these funny rocket go-karts, jet go-karts.
Yeah,
these
I
big
remember.
glowing
Yeah,
tubes.
and that's where you sort of came up with the idea of the jet-powered bike.
Yeah,
and
right.
Jet-powered
Exactly.
anything was
if you
from
haven't
Maddox.
seen Robert Maddox's,
Yeah, he's great.
YouTube
Yeah, I'll look
thing,
him up now,
he's
yeah.
kind of a cute old guy. I think he was an artist and had a lot of welding skills and started building these things, and they just grew into a business. And he makes these pulse jet engines, and that's the same engine that powered the V-2 buzz bomb during World War II. And effectively, what it does is intermittently explodes a fuel and air to produce a very hot pulse of gas that then rockets out the back. As it rockets out, it produces a partial vacuum inside of the chamber. The air rushes back in. The fuel is continually flowing in. Another explosion, and you get this pop, 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 pop type of explosion. The problem with that in terms of efficiency is the fact that because it's operating subsonically, what comes out is very hot, generally well burned, but not completely. There's a lot of smoke. Pulse detonation engines, because they are operating in the supersonic regime, are far more efficient in converting energy. The downside is they're very powerful, and they tend to damage the structures around them. So they're moving to what are called rotating detonation engines, where they try to have a continuous sort of supersonic wavefront moving around inside of the chamber, even more difficult to structure and build. Pulse detonation engines, which are intermittent, are a lot easier to build. We built one. It works. And that is a video that we will be covering to follow up on the idea of shaking buildings a mile away, but they're going to be much smaller explosions.
Yeah, right. And it's not just an explosion. There's an actual use for it.
Yeah,
it's not just for fun.
Not just to make noise. You can actually put it on the back of a bike.
Right, and you have that in the garage right now, right?
Yep.
Don't you?
Yeah, all the parts.
So
and
you have
everything
all
else.
the parts. Yeah.
Yeah.
And here's Robert Maddox for you, if you were interested.
Yeah, they're pretty wacky.
Yeah, he is wacky, but his thumbnails are always pleasing.
We even have one of his engines. We're playing around with it.
Yeah, right. Did you buy one from him, or he built you one?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
He built a small 50,
yeah.
60-pound thrust engine.
Yeah.
I was buying that as a comparison. We were going to do the pulse jet and the pulse detonation side by side to see how they operate. So we got all the stuff.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. Someone asked ramjet.
Problem with a ramjet is it's just impossible to test them. You can potentially get close to testing them using a jet engine blast coming out of the back. But in order for them to be a true ramjet engine, you really have to go supersonic, because their real design is not just to sort of squeeze air in through a narrow orifice and allow it to be compressed as it expands in the chamber behind it. You need shock waves. It's the shock waves that are doing the work. And so until you go supersonic, you're really not building a ramjet. And to produce a supersonic flow at anything other than rocket engine temperatures, which you can do, is just about impossible. And when you're using a rocket engine as your wind tunnel, you're using non-oxygenated air. So then how do you introduce the oxygen again? Supersonic wind tunnels, I've thought about it. It's possible with compressed air. You might be able to do something like that, or a large vacuum chamber. That's probably beyond us.
I don't have the first idea of how to go about it. So
yeah.
I'd rely on him, and I don't want him to get
no budget, no room,
again. Yep.
no willingness.
Yeah. Money on your projects in the last 5 years. Not as much as you would think. It just takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
Have you brewed anything of late? Don't think so. Don't think we've brewed anything recently.
No. The rum, I think the flavored rum was probably the last thing I brewed.
Yeah.
And actually, I think some of it may still be aging. It may be gone. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Somewhere in the barn.
Yeah.
In the light of the LTT drama, do you feel their review of your thermal epoxy was fair? That's actually a good question.
Actually, we did discuss
I do like
this.
That. We, personally, like we
Right.
both talked about it. Yeah.
Right. Gamers Nexus review, I think, was fair because as Linus Tech Tips has grown, you told me it was 80 employees, right?
Yeah, something like that. But
I think they said they have nearly 100 now. Either that number was old or it's like.
But either way, it's close enough.
Contractors
80
or
to
whatever.
100.
Okay. A lot of people.
Even if it was 20, that's still impressive.
And one of their issues was one of the complaints brought by Gamers Nexus was the fact that they were getting a little sloppy. They would put out a review of a product and wouldn't necessarily check all the details, recheck and check and recheck. And then when they would be called on it, they would often correct them, but sometimes well after the fact or with maybe just a little Post-it note, and maybe didn't give enough credit to the enough attention. It's like putting the newspaper article, politician found guilty of something, and then 3 days later they say, oh, we got the name wrong. It was another guy. It's like his career has already been destroyed. And there have been a lot of businesses or people that have purchased products based on, Linus's recommendations. I mean, we've taken them for products that we bought. And so I can see why that might be an argument. And I can't, speak specifically to ever having bought something based on, an article or a review they did and then it turned out to be wrong. I can't back up what that complaint was. But I think when they did the original video, understand that our thermal epoxy, which was an adhesive based on adding solids to it in order to increase the thermal conductivity, it was an excellent material, and it was actually more thermally conductive than the Arctic silver that was currently one of the few things that you could buy when you wanted something thermally conductive and that would also bond your parts together. Not like a thermal grease, it would hold them in place. Well, when this viewer who bought some of this stuff from us when we were selling it earlier on sent it to Linus Tech Tips, we were never aware of it.
Yeah, we didn't
So
know.
they did the test, and one of the things they did, and this is probably consistent with Gamers Nexus findings, is they were a little sloppy in that they compared it to a thermal grease.
Yeah, not a thermal epoxy.
Not a thermal epoxy.
They did fix that though, didn't they? Didn't they do a follow-up video?
Well, I don't
after
think
they made their original.
they only did two.
Yeah,
And the second one was, as I'm going to get into,
Okay.
when we then, after we were sort of kind of had to tell a bunch of people that were commenting on our channel, no, remember they were testing an epoxy against an adhesive. It was an epoxy versus an adhesive. The adhesives are easier to make more thermally conductive. The epoxy, the greases are, because you can mix more solids into them. They're less viscous. It's just a simple fact. And so when it didn't turn out to, beat the thermal greases, and a lot of people were saying, oh, then it's not so good, we decided that what we would do is we would make a thermal grease. It led us to go ahead and try to make a competitive product. And then we then sent that to Linus Tech Tips, and they were kind enough to review it. And they compared it to a couple of leading edge thermal greases, and we were either better than or equal to the very best. So I think they did a pretty decent job of reviewing it. So a little criticism early on that was consistent with being a little sloppy, but a willingness to come back and revisit this topic. So maybe they realized that maybe they owed us a little bit of visibility due to that. But I don't really have any complaints about them.
Yeah, and they didn't immediately just crap all over it.
No.
They were quick, too fast to judge, but fair.
Yeah, reasonably fairish.
Yeah.
Not a big deal.
Yep. Okay. Well, I think this should be it, unless you had any final thoughts or anything like that.
Yeah, maybe a couple of review
Yeah.
thoughts. One of the things, as I said, keep an eye on the Twitter X page. Make
Let me
sure
pull
that
that
if
up,
you
yeah.
can think to do this, please sign up to it, because if something happens in the next week and there is something that is really, shaking, that we want to talk about, we might talk about it that very day or, the next day. And so we can't really depend on YouTube's notifications to let you know when we're going to be doing these things. In addition, as I said before, we'll try to remind you when we can in our other videos about the existence of this live stream, so that you're, oh yeah, I forgot they were going to do this and I didn't follow.
Yep.
So keep an eye. We'll keep reminding you of this and spread the word. We really appreciate it, because as we grow bigger and bigger, we may then be more attractive to having people who you find interesting interact with us live if we're successful with this. So be forgiving about some of the, wonkiness or maybe a little bit of the roughness in a first attempt. And at the same time, we'd appreciate it if you give us our feedback in terms of the poll, when you'd like to see these, maybe what kind of frequency you would like, who you would like to see us interview and, collaborate on in terms of these videos. That would really be very useful and very helpful, and spread the word.
Yeah, and then we'll ask you those questions, like when you want us to be doing these live streams via Twitter up here.
Yeah.
Using its poll feature. We haven't posted a poll on there, so just like this live stream, it's new to us.
Right.
So if there's any weirdness about it or not enough times or dates or however it works, I haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
Just forgive us on that. And again, something interesting, though, you guys have been doing a really good job, though. We started at, I think it was 368 followers, and we're now up to 451.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Yeah. So just during this live stream, you guys helped us quite a bit. So yeah, I think it was fun. I enjoyed it. A little stressful, especially at the beginning, trying to make sure like all the cameras.
But notice
and everything were
nothing.
working, but
nothing blew up.
Nothing blew up.
Nothing melted. The power didn't shut down. There are so many ways that this could go wrong, and it didn't. So again, I really appreciate you spending the Saturday evening with us. I had a ball, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it was really fun. All right, so let's see if I can sign out properly. But thanks again, guys. Have
See
a
you
good
soon.
night.